Chapter 1100. The road ahead is long and I will continue to search for it. Ning Fan respected those who spent their entire lives pursuing the great Tao in order to find the essence of the Tao. However, those who wholeheartedly pursue the Tao would often neglect many important things around them. Ning Fan, on the other hand, was a person who could not let go of the shackles around him. In the words of the immortals, it was hard to sever one's mortal heart. Those who couldn't sever their mortal heart would usually find it hard to achieve anything. However, if they succeeded, they would usually be more powerful than those who had severed their mortal heart. Ning Fan forgot about the countless gazes around him. He forgot about his physical body and the sound of the wind in his ears. His heart was empty and his body was shrouded in green light. Someone recognized that the green light was actually the light of a celestial being realm cultivator. This was the first time Ning Fan revealed his identity as a celestial being realm cultivator in front of everyone. His current status and identity were already different from before. He would not be killed just because he exposed some things. Hence, there was no need for him to hide his identity. He could not hear the exclamations of the others. He listened to the beating of his Tao heart and examined his entire life. He felt that his body and the boundless sea below him were merging with each other bit by bit. He felt that his Tao intent was slowly merging with the seawater of the boundless sea, accepting the baptism of the seawater and obtaining some kind of sublimation. This was the baptism. It was not Ning Fan's body that was being baptized but his Tao. At this moment, Ning Fan did not open his eyes. However, it was as if he could see his entire life reflected in the boundless sea. What he saw was even more vivid than when he opened his eyes. He felt that his life was so short and so insignificant. Compared to the boundless water of the boundless sea, it was simply insignificant. He saw himself, from a mortal youth, resolutely stepping into the wind and snow of 7 Apricot City. He saw himself, in order to increase his strength, he was willing to do anything. All magical treasures in his hands were only tools. The joy of cultivating the Tao that he experienced was not to stand above tens of thousands of people, but to descend from the mountain as an ordinary person, to be with his friends and loved ones in joy and harmony. He ascended the mountain to become an immortal and descended the mountain to become a human. He ascended the mountain to survive and descended the mountain to live. Such a state of mind had its pros and cons. The good thing was that Ning Fan never forgot his original intention and was not lost by fame and fortune on the path of cultivation. The downside was that Ning Fan's passion for cultivation itself was not that great. It was very difficult for him to have a few of the absolute arts that he studied day and night. It was enough for him to use them. He rarely developed different ways of using his treasures. He just muddled through them. He was very powerful, but he had never fully developed his potential because he didn't have enough time. He comprehended his own heaven-holding seal from the heaven-seizing seal, but he did not continue to perfect it. He had comprehended the wind-mist technique from the purple dipper samsara, created the snow-wind technique with his own experience, and created the west-wind technique with his Tao, but he had not been able to reach the peak. His demonified night Tao elephant had reached great accomplishment and formed a Tao technique. In the end, that Tao technique was not developed into a complete illusion technique by him. He had once painstakingly cultivated the 3 flowers at one's prominence for a period of time, but in the end he still failed. He could only blame himself for advancing his cultivation too quickly. His divine abilities and Dharma treasures were often abandoned by him because their power could not keep up with his Dharma treasures. Everyone in the world had their own famous absolute arts, be it as strong as the ancient chaos or as weak as the deity emperor of the lower realms. However, Ning Fan did not do so. What the people of the world remembered were usually the battles he had killed and not a certain kind of famous absolute art. There were too many things that he could develop in his body. Thus, it was meaningless for him to obtain 1 or 2 ultimate abilities. It was also meaningless for him to obtain a few more innate magic treasures. What he needed was not to increase his cultivation but to condense it. What he needed was not to blindly move forward. Instead, he needed to stop and mend the path that he had walked on. However, what exactly was condensing and what exactly was mend? In the boundless ocean, some small fishes suddenly leaped out of the water. They did a somersault in midair and then jumped back into the ocean. Those small fishes were not living creatures. They were the images that Ning Fan had created by fusing his Tao into the boundless ocean. In the past, those who were baptized in the boundless ocean could give birth to fishes. The bigger and more beautiful the fishes they gave birth to were, the more benefits they would receive from the baptism. The Tao fishes that Ning Fan gave birth to were basically small fry that were only a few meters long. In other words, the benefits that he currently received from the baptism were not great. As expected, he's only at the first level. It's no wonder. Even among the immortal venerables of my Calamity clan, there aren't many who could enter the second level of the boundless Tao during the baptism. Most of them are only at the first level. However, I didn't expect that this inconspicuous young man is actually a heavenly being realm cultivator. There aren't many heavenly being realm cultivators in this world. I heard that this young man is the successor of that great Emperor Ancient Chaos? Could it be that great Emperor Ancient Chaos sacrificed his own heavenly being gate and forcefully opened the gate for this young man? This young man is really lucky. He has a good master. Emperor Shanghai let out a cold harumph from a great distance away. His tone sounded a little unbalanced. If it was an ordinary item, it was impossible for him to feel unbalanced as a seven-tribulation immortal emperor. However, the unity of heaven and man was something that even immortal emperors could only dream of. It could greatly increase one's comprehension ability. It was extremely beneficial to one's cultivation. Immortal emperors were rarely able to possess it. Even an immortal emperor of a secret race like him did not have it, but Ning Fan, an ant, had it. The heavens are really blind. Emperor Shanghai was a cultivator of the Southern Heaven Calamity clan. He had been in seclusion all year round. He could not even recognize the younger generation of the Southern Heaven. How could he possibly know Ning Fan, who was far away in the Eastern Heaven? It was even more impossible for him to know that Ning Fan's unity of heaven and man was not the ancient chaos who forcefully opened the heavenly being gate. Instead, he opened it with his own strength. Emperor Shanghai knew very little about Ning Fan's achievements, and he was also not concerned about it. Seeing that Ning Fan was really only at the first level of the boundless Tao realm, he looked down on him even more. However, I heard that this young man with the surname Ning had even killed Xue Chongkong with his own hands. Xue Chongkong was the 19th young emperor of my clan. Since this young man could kill him, how could he be weaker than Xue Chongkong? I remember that Xue Chongkong had entered the second level of the boundless Tao realm during his baptism in the clan. Besides, Xue Chongkong wasn't even an ancient immortal venerable at that time. Emperor Fu Shan said in confusion. Doesn't this further prove that the rumor about this young man killing Xue Chongkong is false? I don't believe that the young emperor of my clan would be killed by an ant of the Eastern Heaven who has a higher cultivation base than him. Emperor Shanghai shook his head and said, if this young man's baptism is only at the first level of the boundless Tao realm, it won't last long. It will end in an hour at most. Emperor Fu Shan also shook his head and said, he did not attach any importance to Ning Fan. When the Tao fish leaped out of the water, it stimulated boundless Tao power. Ning Fan was at the center of the sea, so he absorbed the most amount of Tao power. His mind became clearer and clearer, as if he had entered the immortal realm. The guests and cultivators of the Slaughter Palace also felt the boundless Tao power. All of them felt so comfortable that they could not speak. Many of the questions that puzzled them in the past were solved at this moment. Ning Fan suddenly stood up from the surface of the sea. He still did not open his eyes. However, both of his hands began to form hand seals. The abilities that I cultivate are very complicated. It's difficult to sort them out one by one. However, if I look at them from the perspective of the ending era's cultivation system, it won't be difficult to sort them out. Nascent Soul Realm cultivators have teleportation. Divine Transformation Realm cultivators have teleportation. Void Fragmentation Realm cultivators have the three great abilities: Incarnation, Soul Extraction, and Sovereign Shadow. Ning Fan's body swayed and suddenly disappeared from the surface of the sea with a flash of golden light. Then he reappeared on another part of the sea not far away. Only a few cultivators on the scene could see how Ning Fan moved. His speed was too fast. It was the piercing golden light that Ning Fan used. Ning Fan's perception was already very strong. Moreover, he had opened the second door of the heavenly being realm. Now, with the addition of the Tao comprehension of the boundless sea, his understanding of the piercing golden light had reached an unprecedented level. The piercing golden light had a total of 9 levels. When he stepped on the sky and earth, ripples would be generated. When the ripples reverberated, he would already be millions of li away. Ning Fan had never cultivated the piercing golden light to the highest level. However, at this moment, he was trying it out. He stepped on the golden ripples of heaven and earth, and his body drifted across the surface of the sea. He gradually understood the principle of the piercing golden light and understood its essence. The so-called piercing golden light was actually an overlay of escape techniques. The second piercing golden light required him to use the first piercing golden light for more than 10 times in an instant. The third piercing golden light required him to take 100 steps in an instant and condense the 100 times of piercing golden light into one. The fourth piercing golden light required him to take 1,000 steps in an instant. The fifth piercing golden light, followed by the sixth piercing golden light. Interesting, this kid actually wants to make use of the boundless sea's comprehension ability to comprehend the vertical golden light? Earth-warping golden light was a secret technique that had been lost since ancient times. Because it had been lost, very few cultivators could cultivate this technique to the highest level. It is also difficult to cultivate. One must possess the power of an ancient god, an ancient demon, and an ancient devil. If we cultivators want to cultivate this item, we must borrow the ancestral awakening fruit and forcefully cultivate some of the power of the 3 clans. Even in my calamity race, only clan head Calamity Do. Immeasurably far away, Shanghai Emperor was just about to comment when his eyes suddenly widened. However, Ning Fan, who was on the boundless sea, was moving faster and faster. When he stepped on the sky and earth, the sounds he caused were also getting louder and louder. It was as if he was stepping on lightning. With the second death, this kid's speed had definitely reached the second level. How could it be so fast? Even I can't achieve such a speed. Third death. It was definitely the third death. Clan head had once used the third death, and it was like this. Fourth death. Impossible. Wouldn't this brat's physical body be unable to endure such a fast speed? He was just an ancient immortal sovereign. He's just an immortal venerable. Is this the fifth death? I have never seen the fifth death before, so I can't estimate it. However, isn't this kid's speed a little too fast? Perhaps clan head and the quasi-saints in our race can also be this fast. But this kid is just an ancient immortal sovereign. The corner of Shanghai Emperor's mouth twitched slightly. At this moment, Shanghai Emperor no longer dared to underestimate Ning Fan. His eyes were completely filled with the expression of looking at a monster. He had never heard of any of Ning Fan's battle achievements or devil names. However, after witnessing Ning Fan's unparalleled speed, he found it unbelievable. This 8th generation killing Emperor of the Slaughter Palace was not an idiot. He was obviously a monster with heaven-defying potential. Similarly, Emperor Fushan was so shocked that he could not utter a single word. The speed that Ning Fan displayed made him feel incredulous. He even doubted whether he could keep up with Ning Fan's speed if he chased after Ning Fan. Perhaps, Ning Fan would shake him off with just a few flashes. That would be really embarrassing. Shanghai and Emperor Fushan were not the only ones who were shocked. At this moment, there was only one person who was not shocked. Even a 7th Tribulation Lightning Emperor like Immortal Loli, who was known for her speed, was not as fast as the one Ning Fan was displaying right now. Even Zhang Yu and the others who were hiding in the dark and waiting for the Immortal Emperor of the Calamity Clan with their bags open widened their jaws. Master speed is already comparable to a quasi-saint, isn't it? Old Wu felt that his little heart could not take it anymore. The Ning Fan that he knew in the past seemed to be a fake. The 9 deaths of the Earth Golden Light. If one technique is understood, all techniques will be understood. Since Master can use the 5th death as long as his physical body is strong enough, he will certainly be able to use the rest of his speed. Terrifying. This is too terrifying. This technique was lost in the End era, but Master has actually comprehended all of it by himself? Zhu Er was incomparably shocked. I only know the first death. This little thief is actually so powerful. Zhang Yu felt that there was a small person in his heart who felt slightly unbalanced. However, there was another small person who felt happy for Ning Fan. He felt a kind of joy for helping Ning Fan reach his current level. Ning Fan did not know what the others thought or said. He only knew that he had comprehended all of the golden light at this moment. The only problem was that when the speed of the golden light reaches a certain level, the impact force produced by the instant he teleported was almost enough to destroy the physical body of an immortal emperor. Even if Ning Fan's divine spirit body was a crippled body, the speed of the fifth death was already his limit. If his physical body was strong enough, it would not be difficult for him to use the extreme speed of the ninth death. However, comprehending the vertical golden light was not his main focus at the moment. Unknowingly, the number of small fishes leaping out of the sea was no longer just a few stars. Instead, there were hundreds of them. They were no longer small fry, but fat fish that were more than a foot long. The second level of boundless Tao. Being able to achieve this with his immortal venerable cultivation base, Ning Fan had basically reached the average standard of the immortal venerables of the Calamity clan after this baptism. Golden light, golden light. No matter how high my comprehension of this technique is, it doesn't seem to be as simple and fast as teleportation. The movement of the golden light is too big while teleportation is even more subtle. As for the spirit-severing teleportation technique, it has the wonders of movement and transportation. There's also the Black Devil escape of the Black Devil sect and the Earth shrinking technique, which is widely known. If I extract the essence of all the escape techniques that I have learned and seen in my life and get rid of the impurities, what will happen? The wonder of yin and yang lies in the fact that everything in the world is inclusive, making full use of their strengths and avoiding their weaknesses. Now that I am undergoing the baptism of the boundless sea, if I don't seize the opportunity to condense all of what I have learned, wouldn't it be a waste? Suddenly, Ning Fan stopped the golden light. Then he lifted his foot and took a step forward. The process of this step was extremely slow. It was as if he had condensed thousands of steps into a single step in an instant. At the same time, it also felt like an ordinary teleportation of a nascent soul realm cultivator. This step seemed extremely simple, but it was unimaginably profound. None of the cultivators who were paying attention to this place could understand what Ning Fan was doing. Ning Fan took a step forward, but he could not take it. At the moment he took the step, he felt that countless Tao intents were clashing in his mind. It was a good idea to absorb the strengths of others, but this step was as difficult as ascending to the heavens. Even many quasi-saints and saints might not be able to do it. Cold sweat broke out on his forehead. He felt that if he forcefully takes this step, all the Tao intents contained in the escape techniques that he had learned in his life would explode in his body. Difficult to have both? Why, is it because my yin-yang transformation is not perfect enough? Or did I not grasp the key point? The great Tao is the simplest. The great Tao is the simplest, that's right. That's right. The essence of the so-called escape speed lies in movement. Other than movement, all actions are just burdens and superfluous. The Tao is the foundation. Ning Fan's heart suddenly calmed down. He began to suppress all the comprehensions of escape speed in his mind. The value of the golden light that he had obtained from the boundless sea was immeasurable. Thus, he suppressed it. Teleportation, Black Devil escape, flying in the sky using magic tools. All kinds of flying memories were suppressed by him. He even forgot how to fly in the sky and travel underground as a cultivator. He even forgot what he needed to do in order to stay afloat on the surface of the sea without sinking. The memories in his mind seemed to have been forgotten. However, the memories of his body kept him afloat and did not let him sink to the bottom of the sea. He pursued this feeling of remembering and forgetting at the same time. It was as if he had forgotten all the forms of escape techniques. By doing so, he was getting closer to the true essence of escape techniques. He emptied his mind. He recalled the scenes when he first stepped into 7 Apricot City. He recalled the first step he took on the path of cultivation. That step was the beginning of him flying in the sky and traveling underground. There were no longer so many conflicting Tao intents in his mind. Finally, Ning Fan took this step. His body flickered extremely slowly, moving from one part of the sea to another. His speed was not fast at all. It was almost equivalent to the teleportation of a nascent soul realm cultivator. Everyone on the scene could clearly see Ning Fan's trajectory. Strange. The Rain Sovereign has been preparing for a long time. Why is it just this inconspicuous escape technique? Some of them were puzzled. What kind of escape technique is this? Even though its speed isn't fast, I have never seen it in the cultivation world. Some of them also noticed that Ning Fan's escape technique was unfamiliar. It seemed to be even rarer than the golden light on the ground. Could it be an escape technique that had been lost since ancient times? Only a small number of old monsters could see that Ning Fan was actually creating his own escape technique. Most of the old monsters on the scene had created their own abilities before. However, there were also differences in their abilities. Even though the escape technique that Ning Fan created was not fast, the profound principles contained within it were actually something that no one on the scene could understand. It was enough to show how brilliant it was. What kind of escape technique is this? Even Emperor Shanghai and Emperor Fushan, who were far away in the starry sky, felt solemn. Ning Fan's mind was as calm as still water. His mind kept recalling the feelings he had when he took the first step on the path of cultivation. After taking the first step, there would be the second step and the third step. He walked further and further on the path of cultivation. Today, however, he wanted to reverse everything that he had learned and obtained to the very beginning. Originally, I didn't want to advance on this path of cultivation. But if I have no choice but to advance, then I can advance even faster. When Ning Fan took a step forward, it also felt like he had taken 1,000 steps and then 10,000 steps in an instant. His speed was getting faster and faster. At first, it was only equivalent to a nascent soul realm cultivator's instant shift. Then, it continued to increase until it reached the speed of the earth traversing golden light. Little by little, it surpassed the earth traversing golden light. Everyone was shocked. Even though the golden earth light was already a famous escape technique in the ancient times, Ning Fan's self-created technique was actually able to surpass it. Even with the help of the boundless sea, it was still a little too heaven-defying. At some point in time, the number of fish leaping out of the sea had increased to over 1,000, and each of them was several feet long. Emperor Shanghai was inwardly shocked. A Tao fish of such a size meant that Ning Fan had at least attained the 4th level of the boundless Tao realm. No wonder he could create such an unimaginable ability. In the history of the Hua clan, the only immortal reverend who could enter the 4th level of the boundless Tao realm was clan leader Huado. Anyone else who wanted to enter the 4th level of the boundless Tao realm had to at least be an immortal emperor. Could it be that this child's cultivation talent is actually on par with the patriarch's? Unbelievable! It's really the right decision to come to this investigation. If we didn't come here, how would we know that the 8th Emperor Shah of the Slaughter Palace is such a heaven-defying figure? Emperor Shanghai's expression was extremely solemn. Wait a minute. The Tao fish of the boundless sea has changed again. Emperor Fushan's body trembled all of a sudden. Ning Fan suddenly stopped in his tracks and stopped using his newly created escape technique. Then he changed his ability. He pointed his 5 fingers at the entire boundless sea and forcefully extracted the sea soul of the boundless sea. At the same time, the Tao fish of the boundless sea became bigger and more numerous. It had entered the 5th level of the boundless Tao realm. Soul extraction technique. Many immortal cultivators knew how to extract the soul of the boundless sea. However, there was definitely no one else who could do so during the Age of Chaos. Ning Fan was just an immortal revered of 10,000 ancient times. How could he do such a heaven-defying thing? That was the boundless sea that only immortal sovereign Beidou had a way to suppress. The 3 void fragmentation realm abilities are Incarnation, Soul Extraction, and Sovereign Shadow. Among them, the Tao of soul extraction was created by the barbarians. In the eyes of barbarians, all living things have souls and they can extract the souls of nature. As the 10th barbarian god, my attainments in the Tao of soul extraction are extraordinary. As for the barbarians, the reason why the mountains and seas of the barbarians have soul sense is actually because they learned how to get close to nature from the ancient divine spirits. I am a crippled divine spirit. This fact is even more terrifying than my identity as the 10th barbarian god. The so-called soul extraction technique is actually no different from cultivators borrowing the power of heaven and earth. The reason why it is difficult for people to improve their understanding of the soul extraction technique is because they only extract the soul to increase their cultivation base within a short period of time. Soul extraction technique is not such a simple thing. In the past, I thought that extracting the souls of the 6 Tao realms was the strongest technique. However, that is not the case. The so-called soul extraction technique is actually to assimilate everything in heaven and earth into one's body. This kind of assimilation cannot be simply snatched. Using the word extraction to describe it is a little too violent. I might as well use the word borrow instead. Divine spirits control nature and they can borrow power from nature. The mountains and seas have souls. As for the things that are connected to my Tao sense, be it living beings or the mountains and seas, I should be able to borrow their power and souls as a crippled divine spirit. At this moment, Ning Fan's understanding of the soul extraction technique had risen to an unprecedented level. He placed the sea soul back into the boundless sea. Then he raised his hand and pressed down again. This time, there was no forceful action. However, for some unknown reason, be it the starry sky, the stars, the cultivators or the mountains and seas, everyone's power was borrowed by Ning Fan. Invisible soul power continuously flowed into Ning Fan's body. The soul power was not used to increase Ning Fan's cultivation base. Instead, it turned into an endless stream of magic power and accumulated in Ning Fan's body. Ning Fan felt that his magic power was unprecedentedly abundant, as if it would never be used up no matter how much he squandered it. It was as if he would not be able to use up his ancient Devil Mountain breaking strike for a few hundred times. However, borrowing magic power from everything in the universe was also mentally exhausting. In just 10 breaths of time, he felt exhausted and had no choice but to stop borrowing souls. What's going on? What did the Rain Lord do? He actually extracted a trace of our soul power. Everyone was shocked by Ning Fan's method. However, only Ning Fan did not have any ill intentions. They had never seen such a horrifying soul extraction technique in the cultivation world. Was this also a technique created by the Rain Lord? This is not a technique he created. This is the borrowing law from all living things. However, it is different from the borrowing law from all living things recorded in the top secret scrolls of my clan. It doesn't seem to be complete. Could it be that this young man is comprehending this kind of supreme secret technique? Outside the boundless starry sky, Emperor Sanghai blurted out involuntarily. Borrowing law from all living things. Isn't that the same as the monster that was imprisoned in my clan? As long as one's state of mind is strong enough, they don't even need to use their own magic power during a battle. They can completely offset the soul power of everything in the surroundings. This young man actually knows this technique as well. Is he also that kind of monster? Emperor Fushan also cried out involuntarily. I don't know. Our clan leader once said that if we encounter creatures similar to that monster, we should try our best to capture them alive. They will be very useful. The soul extraction technique that Ning Fan used is very similar to the borrowing law from all living things technique. However, it looks more incomplete. We still can't be sure whether he is the kind of monster that our clan leader needs. Perhaps Elder Helion will be able to give us an answer after he arrives. Emperor Sanghai said with uncertainty. After Ning Fan stopped borrowing souls, he consumed a pill. It was a 9 transformations golden pill that was specially used to recover one's state of mind. However, even with the help of the pill, the amount of mental power that was consumed was not something that could be easily recovered. He knew that with the help of the boundless sea, his understanding of the soul extraction technique had risen to an unprecedented level. Of course, comprehending the soul-borrowing technique was not his ultimate goal. The method he used to recover his magic power, the endless growth of the Tao of Wood, the great 5 elements physique, and the art of killing. His original intention was to merge all of these complicated techniques into one. However, he did not know that when he had just comprehended the soul-borrowing technique, he had vaguely touched the threshold of another innate ability of ancient divine beings, borrowing law from all living things. Unlike the non-combat ability of communicating with all living things, the borrowing law from all living things technique could greatly increase one's combat power. The ancient divine beings who had comprehended this innate ability could, in a sense, have infinite magic power as long as their state of mind was strong enough. Of course, this kind of innate ability was also extremely difficult to awaken. For someone like Ning Fan who had already awakened one kind of innate ability, it was impossible for him to comprehend a second kind of innate ability even if he had touched the threshold of the innate ability. Every method of recovering magic power is different. It's impossible to merge them into one forever. However, if it's only for a short period of time, all of a sudden, Ning Fan withdrew his qi. After an unknown period of time, rays of 5 elements light emerged from his body. The 5 elements light flickered for a long time before it was finally extinguished by Ning Fan. No one knew what the 5 elements light was. Ning Fan was the only one who was slightly surprised. He seemed to have gained something but also seemed to have some doubts that he could not solve. What is Rain Lord doing? I don't know. He's probably studying something. But why is Rain Lord's clothes turning black bit by bit? Under everyone's gaze, Ning Fan's white robes turned into an emperor's robe and crown, turning completely black. The Ink Tempest soul-splitting technique had appeared again after so many years. In the past, the Ink Tempest soul-splitting technique was a type of incarnation. However, this time, it had become a complicated carrier under Ning Fan's forceful fusion. Soul borrowing, great 5 elements physique, the Tao of Wood, the art of killing. Everything was integrated into this incarnation of Ning Fan. Because of this, the black-robed Ning Fan gave off a feeling that he was even more terrifying than ordinary 6th Tribulation immortal emperors. What a terrifying pressure! How could a mere incarnation feel like this? What kind of incarnation is this? Emperor Shanghai and Emperor Fushan were shocked. Chapter 1101. The Black Tempest soul-splitting technique was a technique that Ning Fan had created when he was still in the Rain World. It was not the strongest technique that he had created himself. Instead, it was a technique that allowed him to utilize his incarnation ability to the extreme. At this moment, Ning Fan used this technique as a carrier and fused many of his abilities into it. He recalled the scene when he first comprehended the Black Torrent Soul Doppelganger. He had created this technique step by step with the Divine Thought Technique's soul incarnation as the foundation. He remembered that when he was cultivating in the Endless Sea, he had borrowed the power of Thunder Emperor Tai Su to fight against Great Emperor Mo Luo across time and space. At that time, he was on the brink of life and death, and he coincidentally entered the realm of the unity of heaven and man, comprehending the Black Torrent soul-splitting technique to the realm of 10 billion clones. Even those as strong as Great Emperor Mo Luo and Lightning Emperor Tai Su were shocked by the 10 billion clones. In the past, the 10 billion split divine sense of ink was Ning Fan's final understanding of this technique. However, due to the insufficient strength of his spirit sense, he could not truly display it in the end. It was a great regret for him. But it was different now. After attaining the crippled divine spirit body, the strength of his sea of consciousness and spirit sense had risen to an unimaginable level. 10 billion clones might not be enough, but a few thousand or even tens of thousands of clones was still doable. Moreover, Ning Fan's current cultivation base had already attained the ancestor realm. His horizons were far beyond what he had in the past. Besides, he had also integrated other characteristics into the foundation of this technique. The power of the boundless Tao of the boundless sea made his divine sense unprecedentedly clear. At this moment, every thought of his was filled with creativity. The ancient demon light in the eyes of the black-robed Ning Fan flickered. He performed a hand seal with all 10 of his fingers. All of a sudden, his body divided into two. Then, the two divided into four and the four divided into eight. The more he divided into, the more he divided into. In just a few breaths' time, there were more than 10,000 clones of the black-robed Ning Fan on the surface of the ocean. The black-robed Ning Fan swept his gaze across them and walked towards one of the clones. That clone contained all of his understanding towards escape techniques along the way. It was almost close to the essence of the Tao. Every step he took was faster than the golden light on the ground. The black-robed Ning Fan and the Avatar stared at each other for a long time. Finally, he asked, "Are you willing to become my divine ability imprint?" The escape technique clone laughed. "I am you and you are me. Why can't we become imprints?" As soon as he finished speaking, the escape technique clone turned into a black shadow and drifted away. The black shadow flowed into the feet of the black-robed Ning Fan bit by bit. Then, it formed hundreds and thousands of escape technique runes under his feet and went into his body. Everyone was deeply shocked by this scene. It was no wonder that a mere incarnation of this black-robed Ning Fan could give others such a terrifying feeling. It turned out that he was actually a special incarnation that could directly imprint other Tao techniques onto his body. This scene was like a spirit attachment of a magical treasure, forcefully injecting some kind of magical power. But humans were not magic treasures. In the age of chaos, how many people dared to treat themselves as magic treasures and forcefully attach magical powers to them? Furthermore, the so-called spirit attachment of magical treasures was actually just an imitation of spirit equipment, and spirit equipment was an imitation of a real ancient demon. Ning Fan's black current spirit dividing technique had fused with the characteristics of the ancient demons bit by bit. He could forcefully imprint the Tao law of heaven and earth on his body like a spirit attachment, turning himself into a magical treasure, a spiritual equipment. It was very difficult for other people's incarnations to achieve this. However, Ning Fan was an ancient demon with ancestral blood. Thus, it was not difficult for him to achieve this. Besides, he was a deity spirit physique. His physical qualities in all aspects were incomparably heaven-defying. It was enough for him to endure the damage caused by the magical power imprinted on his body. Moreover, his physical body would not be destroyed by those imprints. This point was even more commendable. After fusing with the escape technique clone, the black-robed Ning Fan walked towards the second clone. It was a clone whose body was glowing with the light of the 5 elements. "Are you willing to become my imprint?" "Yes." That clone turned into a black shadow and flew into the black-robed Ning Fan's body. Then, it turned into hundreds of runes imprinted on his body. After that, the black-robed Ning Fan walked towards the third clone, turning it into a runes imprinted on his body. That was the soul extracting technique. The fourth clone was the killing art clone. The fifth clone was the wood Tao technique. The sixth clone was the rain Tao technique. There were also the dark Tao technique and the war Tao technique. More and more runes imprinted on the black-robed Ning Fan's body. Others naturally could not see the mysteries of each clone. Only Ning Fan knew that all of the clones here possessed some kind of divine abilities and abilities that he had learned in his life. Using the method of splitting his consciousness, he separated the various divine abilities and abilities in his body. After that, he absorbed and refined them one by one. Not all of his clones possessed heaven-defying abilities. There were also some clones that only possessed the first step of divine abilities and magic techniques. Thus, the black-robed Ning Fan extracted their essence and absorbed them. The Phoenix Nirvana clone, the Undying Bloodline clone, the Black Star Technique clone. All kinds of clones turned into imprints that increased the black-robed Ning Fan's recovery power. The Void Ignition clone, the Heaven-Breaking Swordfinger clone, the Reverse Big Dipper clone. The number of imprints on the black-robed Ning Fan increased and his aura force became stronger. The Ancient Devil Mountain Breaking Strike, the Yin Yang 5 Swords, the Returning Ruin Finger, the Oblivion Flow Technique, the Sword Control Technique, the Heaven Seizing Seal, the Heaven Holding Seal, the War God Art, the Heaven Peering Rain Technique, the Broken Bones Army Technique, the 3 Flowers Converging Crown Technique, the Reverse Spirit Technique, the Mountains and Seas Incantation. Time passed by slowly. In the end, the tens of thousands of clones were refined into imprints by the black-robed Ning Fan. Tens of millions of black shadow imprints hovered around the black-robed Ning Fan's body. It gave people the feeling that each of the imprints was a planet in the starry sky, and he was the only sun that was protected by those planets. The black-robed Ning Fan formed hand seals with all 10 of his fingers. Among the tens of millions of black shadow imprints, those that had something in common began to fuse with each other. The number of imprints gradually decreased, but the pressure he gave off became stronger. When the number of black shadow imprints decreased to only 100,000, the black-robed Ning Fan finally stopped forming hand seals. He frowned slightly as if the remaining 100,000 black shadow imprints still made him dissatisfied. The 100,000 black shadow imprints formed a cross-shaped halo with a diameter of several zhang. It was like a ring of planets, protecting the black-robed Ning Fan in the center. It also looked like the black hole halo that was commonly seen in the starry sky of the universe. However, the halo was black in color. The black-robed Ning Fan then shook his body and returned to his previous appearance. However, the cross-shaped halo that was formed by the 100,000 black shadow imprints did not disappear. Instead, it remained and became a part of his body. First, he used the ancient demon spirit attachment technique to attach the imprints to his body. Then, he used the form of the ancient demon spirit wheels to unify those imprints, forming a huge cross-shaped halo. This technique required the compatibility of the yin-yang transformation to balance the different imprints. It was extremely difficult for cultivators who were not at the yin-yang transformation realm to achieve this. Moreover, due to the great power of this technique, the backlash would be severe. Only a deity like Ning Fan would have the guts to create this technique on a whim. This cross-shaped halo had extracted the essence of all of Ning Fan's unique techniques and combined them into one. It gave people a feeling that its power was unfathomable. Under such a state, be it Ning Fan's attack, defense, speed, recovery, illusory techniques, senses or auxiliary abilities, all of them had been raised to an unimaginable level. He could feel it with his own body. As soon as this cross-shaped halo was activated, Ning Fan would be using the killing technique, soul extraction technique, star technique, phoenix nirvana technique, and countless other abilities at the same time. He did not need to activate all of his abilities during a battle. At this moment, Ning Fan felt that a casual punch or a sword strike from him was equivalent to the power of hundreds or thousands of abilities. The magic power in his body was almost endless. He could continuously replenish his magic power from heaven and earth. Of course, once the cross-shaped halo was activated, Ning Fan's mental strength would be greatly consumed. It could be said that this cross-shaped halo was Ning Fan's highest combat power. Normally, when Ning Fan was fighting with others, he would only use 10 to 20% of his maximum combat power. Sometimes, he was even reluctant to use that 10 to 20% in order to avoid consuming too much of his strength. As for how strong this newly created cross-shaped halo was, Ning Fan would still need to go through actual combat in order to get a conclusion. 100,000 marks of abilities and the cross-shaped spirit wheel halo. What kind of ability did this child Ning Fan create? Even I can sense a trace of danger from it. In the distant starry sky, Emperor Fu Shan's heart was filled with astonishment. Then he felt extremely ashamed. As an immortal emperor, he actually felt fearful of an immortal venerate from the ancient times. It was just ridiculous. This feeling of pressure must be an illusion. This isn't a single ability but a fusion of abilities. In theory, it's very simple. However, even a quasi-saint realm expert can't do it. For example, if there are two abilities, one is the fire controlling technique while the other is the water controlling technique. Both of them are completely different. How are you going to fuse them together? However, this child is able to do it. It has something to do with his identity as the successor of ancient chaos. This child is really a little dangerous. Emperor Sanghai's eyes were extremely solemn. The way he looked at Ning Fan right now was like looking at an immortal emperor at the same level as him. The Slaughter Palace was really lucky to be able to obtain such a good talent to inherit the position of the 8th generation after the death of the 7th generation. If this child is allowed to grow, Would the Calamity clan still have the chance to destroy the Slaughter Palace? Brothers sang high, this child must not be allowed to live. Once he becomes an immortal emperor, it will be impossible for our clan to plot against that sacred slaughter heaven wasteland anymore. We must kill him in the cradle. You don't have to worry about his identity as the successor of Ancient Chaos. Ancient Chaos is on the verge of death. No matter how arrogant he is, he won't be able to go to Southern Heaven. Emperor Fu Shan's killing intent flashed across his eyes, and he said with a serious expression, I think so too. Once Elder Hellion arrives, we will take action. Even if we can't destroy the Slaughter Palace today, we must try our best to kill this child. I don't know the exact power of that cross-shaped halos. However, just from the 7th level of the Tao of Boundless Realm, I can tell that this child is definitely a monster. Even if he is compared to those ancient immortal venerates, he is also an absolute anomaly. Emperor Sanghai also said with a strong killing intent. He had already regarded Ning Fan as an obstacle to the rise of the Calamity clan. The Tao fish in the boundless sea had grown to tens of zhang long without anyone noticing. They even grew short wings. Tens of thousands of large fishes leaped out of the water and flew low above the surface of the sea. It was a spectacular scene. It was the 7th level of the Tao of Boundless Realm. This level was the limit of all second-step cultivators since ancient times. As for the 8th level, only saints could comprehend it. In the past, in the Northern Dipper Immortal Domain, the ancient great cultivators who were on par with Ancient Chaos and the others could only reach the 7th level of the Tao of Boundless Realm when they were at their peak. The fact that Ning Fan was able to enter the 7th level of the Tao of Boundless Realm with a cultivation base that was not even at the Immortal King realm was enough to prove that he was extraordinary. Unfortunately, Ning Fan did not have much of an idea about the 12 levels of the Boundless Sea. Neither did he pay attention to them, nor would he be happy because of such an empty title. He was more concerned about practical benefits. He was a practical person. With a thought, Ning Fan kept the cross-shaped halos into his body. Only then did the intense consumption of his mind power stop. His eyes revealed deep exhaustion. As expected, using all the abilities that he had learned at the same time could not last for too long. Besides, the consumption of his mind power was different from his magic power and injuries. It was harder to recover. If it is not necessary, it would be better to use this cross-shaped halos sparingly. If his heart force was exhausted, even an immortal emperor would die on the spot. The strength of Ning Fan's mind power could be considered as one of the best among those at the same level as him. However, even he could not maintain this cross-shaped halos for too long. Based on his estimation, he could only maintain the halos for around 200 breaths at most before his mind power would be exhausted. Just like now, his mind power had already been depleted by half. He could only maintain the halos for another 100 breaths at most. This cross-shaped halos is a kind of fusion of abilities. The more abilities it fuses, the more terrifying its power will be. Since I created this technique, I should give it a name. However, it's too troublesome to give it a name. In the past, I couldn't take care of all of them at the same time because I had learned too many abilities. Now, it's different. If I learn more powerful abilities in the future, I can turn them into imprints and fuse them into the cross-shaped halos, making it even stronger. Besides, I remember that among the 3 great techniques of Great Emperor Ancient Chaos, there is one called Tao Seizing from the Void. It can be used to seize other people's abilities. Great Emperor Ancient Chaos once told me to comprehend this technique on my own through the sun, moon and star steels when my cultivation base is sufficient. While Ning Fan was pondering, congratulatory voices suddenly resounded from all directions. Congratulations to the 8th Killing Emperor for comprehending a new technique. So the baptism has already ended. Ning Fan felt slightly regretful. His cross-shaped halos still had a lot of shortcomings. It seemed like he could not use the power of the boundless sea to further perfect it. He could only perfect it on his own in the future. The large fishes flew to the bottom of the sea and disappeared. Then, the seawater of the boundless sea evaporated into mist and dissipated in the air as the summoning time was up. Amidst the dense mist, a large amount of starlight suddenly flew out from the main star of the Slaughter Star. They formed the shadows of Dao fruit trees around the altar. Those Dao fruit trees were not real. They were just illusions. However, all of the Dao fruits that grew on the trees were real. Ning Fan knew that after the baptism ended, the emperor conferring ceremony would enter the most popular banquet period. Seeing the appearance of the Dao fruit trees, many female immortals of the slaughter hall who were waiting at the side began to burn incense and pray. Then, they carried flower baskets and golden hammers to knock down the Dao fruits that were emitting intense spiritual qi. They plucked the fruits and sent them to the venue for the guests to enjoy. According to rumors, when the previous killing emperor's emperor conferring ceremony reached this stage, there would usually be more people than fruits. Only a few or even a few tens of people could eat one Dao fruit. However, it was different today. There were too few people who came. Even if the cultivators of the slaughter hall were included, the number of people was still much less than the number of Dao fruits. Usually, one person could eat 2 to 3 Dao fruits. Of course, the guests and the host were all happy. On the surface, Ning Fan had already joined the banquet and was drinking with the guests. However, in reality, his mind was still maintaining the rain technique. He was staring at the 2 immortal emperors of the Calamity clan in the distant starry sky. His rain technique was too secretive. It was so secretive that the 2 immortal emperors did not even know that they were being monitored by Ning Fan. The reason why Zhang Yu and the others had yet to arrive was because they had secretly received Ning Fan's order to ambush the 2 immortal emperors of the Calamity clan. As for Ouyang Nuan and the other women, they wanted to come together with the people of the Qianqiu sect. Therefore, the members of the Qianqiu sect decided to wait until the last moment to congratulate Ning Fan. One of them is at the 6th tribulation while the other is at the 7th tribulation. Moreover, the 2 of them seem to be waiting for some Elder Hellion. I'm afraid that Elder Hellion is even more powerful. However, he probably isn't a quasi-saint realm expert. With Zhang Yu around, I don't have to worry about dealing with that Elder Hellion. If I ask the Battle King to help us, it won't be too difficult for us to deal with the remaining 2 immortal emperors. However, I wonder when the people of the Calamity clan will come. He did not take Immortal Lowly into consideration. After all, Immortal Lowly had become smaller again. Her mental state had deteriorated significantly. It would more or less affect her combat strength. While Ning Fan was drinking his wine, he suddenly saw little Demonis walking towards him. Using the excuse of toasting him, she took the opportunity to hold his hand and wrote a few words on his palm. Xiang Zhu has arrived, Ning Fan was surprised. Then his heart felt warm. He did not expect that he could actually invite a quasi-saint realm expert like Xiang Bozi to attend his insignificant emperor conferring ceremony. Isn't his face a little too big? Xiang Bozi's cultivation base was far higher than Ning Fan's. If he had the intention to conceal himself and did not have any malicious intent or killing intent towards Ning Fan, it would naturally be difficult for Ning Fan to notice the fact that Xiang Bozi had already arrived. With Xiang Bozi's presence, there was even less of a need to worry about today's emperor conferring ceremony. Now that Ning Fan already knew that Xiang Bozi had arrived, he could vaguely sense Xiang Bozi's direction. He raised his wine goblet and toasted a certain direction in the distant starry sky. Ming Hai was surprised. He asked Ning Fan why, but Ning Fan just smiled without saying a word. So this is the successor of ancient chaos that you, Taoist Musong, hold in such high regard. The 3 of us have worked together to conceal ourselves, but this young man was still able to sense our presence. This young man's cultivation base is average, but his senses are really impressive. Not bad. Not bad. In the starry sky, a hidden quasi-saint realm expert said to the other 2 quasi-saints beside him in surprise. His voice sounded a little unfamiliar. It was a voice that Ning Fan had never heard before. There was actually an unfamiliar quasi-saint realm expert who came to attend his emperor conferring ceremony? When Ning Fan's Yunyan heard the voice, she was extremely surprised. Not only does this young man have great senses, but he also has countless other techniques. If this young man doesn't have some true abilities, how could I, Musong, owe him a favor and step into the mortal world? One of the quasi-saints answered with a smile. Judging from the voice, it was actually Musong. Even Taoist Mu Song had come in person. Speaking of which, I find it very strange that you, Ho Tu, would actually stand on this young man's side and become enemies with the Dark Race and the Calamity Race. Could it be that you also owe this young man a favor? Taoist Mu Song asked. It turned out that the other mysterious quasi-saint realm expert was actually Old Man Ho Tu of the Ho Tu sect. Ning Fan had heard of Old Man Ho Tu's name before. The Ho Tu sect was also a major sect in the Eastern Heaven. However, Ning Fan never knew that the old ancestor of the Ho Tu sect, who never showed his face in public, was actually a quasi-saint realm expert. Moreover, he had actually come today. I don't owe him a favor. However, Old Man Xiang gave me some benefits and asked me to stand up for this young man. Old Man Ho Tu answered. Old Man Xiang must have paid a huge price to ask Ho Tu to come out of seclusion, right? Mu Song asked curiously. Xiang Bozi only chuckled. He did not mention a word about the price he paid. Of course, he would not tell Mu Song that he had given half of the extreme yang water that Ning Fan had given him to Old Man Ho Tu in exchange for Ho Tu's help. At the same time, he also obtained a heaven-opening stone from Ho Tu's day. It was exactly what Ning Fan needed. The three quasi-saints no longer said anything. Ning Fan felt even more relieved. Looking at the situation, there were actually 3 quasi-sages secretly supporting him in this emperor crowning ceremony. In this case, not to mention the fact that the Calamity Race only sent 3 immortal emperors to cause trouble, even if they sent 3 quasi-sages, it would still not end well for them. There was nothing to worry about during the emperor crowning ceremony today. Time passed slowly, and the banquet was already halfway through. Ning Fan was having a drinking competition with a few burly men from the eastern sky when he suddenly frowned. Almost at the same time, 3 figures enshrouded in colorful light crossed the starry sky. These 3 immortal emperors did not hide their killing intent at all. It was even more obvious that they were enemies and not friends. The guests and the cultivators of the Temple of Massacre gasped as their hearts sank. 1/6 tribulation, 1/7 tribulation, and 1/8 tribulation. The lineup of these 3 emperors could be said to be luxurious, and their auras were even more powerful than many celestial emperors of the same level. Clearly, they were all extremely powerful. The insignia of the Dark Race had been spread all over the world. The emblems on their clothes weren't the emblems of the Dark Races, but something else. Those with a discerning eye guessed that these 3 celestial emperors were sent by the Southern Heaven secret tribe. Bang, bang, bang. Everyone put down their wine cups and rose to their feet. They took out their magic treasures and weapons, glaring at the newcomers. They were ready to fight at any time, even if their opponents were high and mighty immortal emperors. If it was during normal times, these people would never dare to unleash their killing intent against immortal emperors even if they were given 8 times more courage. Today, however, they were determined to die together with Ning Fan. Would they still be afraid of immortal emperors when they were willing to sacrifice their lives? Interesting. A group of ants actually dared to unleash their killing intent against me. People say that the cultivators of the eastern sky are mostly fierce and ferocious, which is completely different from the cultivators of my southern heaven. They are indeed different. They are still the same as when Pajun was still alive. Pajun referred to the title of the 7th Slaughter Emperor, Pajun Shadi. Between Fu Shan and Shanghai Emperor was a hunchbacked old man who was holding a walking stick with one hand. His other sleeve was empty as if he did not have an arm. He narrowed his eyes and scanned the crowd with a cold smile. He was Elder Helian Xuanzong, whom Fu Shan and Shanghai Emperor had mentioned. His cultivation base was at the 8 Tribulations realm, and he was only a few steps away from the 9 Tribulations realm. His chi was unusually strong. He was much stronger than the 2 Divine Void Emperors that Ning Fan had met before. The 3 immortal emperors of the Calamity clan were hovering in the sky above the venue. Their aura force was unparalleled. Everyone could feel the heavenly might that came from above. Elder Minghai's face darkened. He ordered the cultivators to activate the star-protecting grand formation of the Slaughter Star. However, the hunchbacked old man just casually stomped on the ground with his walking stick, and the grand formation was completely destroyed. Countless cultivators in charge of the formation coughed out blood due to the backlash of the formation being broken. Hundreds and thousands of cultivators were sent flying away by the strong wind. They looked extremely miserable, but they still managed to return to their original positions. While trembling, they glared at the three emperors. Trembling and trembling were the instinctive fear of facing immortal emperors. Their glares were a kind of determination. After getting drunk, their spirits rose. None of them fled. Elder Huyen's eyes became even more gloomy. The scenes of the 6 emperors besieging the slaughter palace in the past replayed in his mind. His left arm that he had lost was aching. The slaughter palace. What a great slaughter palace. I would like to see how the slaughter palace is going to resist his arrival without Pajun. Who is the 8th slaughter emperor? Helian Xuanzong's killing intent was terrifying. He looked at the cultivators beneath his feet as if they were nothing. There was only immortal Loli who was an immortal emperor here. Fu Shan and Shanghai were more than enough to deal with her. He was alone. Killing all of them was as easy as taking something out of his pocket. I am. What do you want? Ning Fan's body swayed and he flew up to the sky. He was facing the 3 great emperors of the Calamity clan alone. In terms of aura force alone, he was not weaker than them at all. After all, he had killed so many immortal emperors. In terms of the souls of immortal emperors that he had killed, the 3 of them in front of him did not even have that many souls. Helian Xuanzong frowned. He did not expect that Ning Fan, a mere immortal venerate of 10,000 ancient times, would actually have such a terrifying aura force. Even existences like him were not as strong as him. Previously, when Fu Shan and Shanghai told him that he was the one and only, he did not really believe them. Now, however, he started to believe them a little. However, most of it was still disdain. This was his pride as an older generation immortal emperor. How could he be scared by a little kid with more than 100,000 bone spirits? Seeing that Ning Fan took the initiative to show himself, Helian Xuanzong did not even bother to talk nonsense with him. He opened his mouth wide and a ray of extremely cold light that was as thick as a bowl instantly shot towards Ning Fan's face. At this moment, the God-exterminating shield could not be of much use. Thus, Ning Fan simply gave up on defense and directly used offense against offense. Before the ray of cold light could hit Ning Fan, it was engulfed by a monastic robe that suddenly appeared and disappeared without a trace. At the same time, the Garuda demon's subduing orb shot out from the shadows of the starry sky. Helian Xuanzong was too careless. Naturally, he was shocked by the sneak attack. He wanted to dodge it, but he was still a step too late. His right arm was hit by the demon's subduing pearl, causing his skin to split open. He almost couldn't hold his walking stick anymore. He felt a slight pain and a trace of blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. His expression was one of shock and anger. Back then, the 7th generation had cut off his left arm, and today, a mere 8th generation had injured his right arm. How humiliating! He deserves to die. He deserves to die. Since you attacked me without saying a word, I won't show any mercy. I don't care if you are an immortal emperor or a member of a secret race. Since you dare to cause trouble here today, don't even think about leaving this place alive. Ning Fan said coldly. Chapter 1102. The Rain Lord is really arrogant. He actually said that he wants to keep the 3 immortal emperors here. Everyone was shocked by Ning Fan's arrogant words. Even though the cultivators here were prepared to die with Ning Fan, they never had the crazy thought of killing the 3 immortal emperors. In the eyes of all the cultivators in the Eastern Heaven, killing an immortal emperor was an impossible task. It was widely acknowledged that immortal emperors were difficult to kill. Even if a high-level immortal emperor were to hunt down a low-level immortal emperor, it would be easy to win but extremely difficult to kill them. In the past, Sun Luo also needed a long time to prepare to kill an immortal emperor. However, the crowd was only surprised for a moment. Moments later, everyone's blood was boiling because of Ning Fan's words. Killing an immortal emperor? How majestic was that? If they could do that, they would have no more regrets. Even if it was an impossible task, as long as the Rain Lord is willing to do it, they were willing to go crazy with him for once. They'd given up their lives and dared to pull the emperor down from his high horse. At this moment, everyone had already disregarded life and death. Was there anything they didn't dare to do? So what if he wants to kill an immortal emperor? Ha, ha. This little brat actually said that he wants to keep the three of us here. The three emperors of the disaster race laughed in unison. Even Helian Xuanzong, who had a gloomy expression, just now laughed. Of course, they were mocking him. They were mocking Ning Fan for overestimating himself and being too full of himself. They were mocking Ning Fan for being arrogant enough to want to kill an immortal emperor. This young man's innate talent is heaven-defying, but he's a fool. Is there something wrong with his brain? It's the 7th level of the boundless Tao realm. I have overestimated this young man. In this cultivation world, there has never been a lack of people with peerless innate talent. However, what really determines a person's achievement is usually not their innate talent but their temperament. This young man is too arrogant and looks down on the heroes of the world. It's hard for him to become someone great. One day, he will die on the path of cultivation because of his arrogance. In that case, I don't even want to kill him with my own hands. Emperor Shanghai said disdainfully. Those who lack temperament are usually afraid of illusion techniques. Even if this young man has 2 innate magic treasures, I can turn him into ashes with just 1 illusion technique. He won't even be able to use his magic treasures. Since the 2 of you are already not interested in this young man, go and deal with the others. Leave this young man to me. Emperor Fu Shan, on the other hand, laughed heartily. He turned into a ray of 7-colored light of luck and dashed towards Ning Fan. He actually wanted to replace Helian Xuanzong to fight against Ning Fan. Moreover, he sounded confident as if he could kill Ning Fan in just a few moves. Helian Xuanzong didn't stop Fu Shan Emperor. The wound on his right arm, which was caused by the demon's subduing bead, suddenly flickered with starlight and instantly healed. Not even a scar was left. It was as if even connate treasures were unable to cause much damage to him. The reason why he was so angry just now was because he had lost a lot of face. After all, he was a dignified 8th Tribulation Immortal Emperor. It was too shameful for him to be injured by a mere immortal venerate. However, it was not because his injuries were too severe. Far away in the starry sky, many top figures of the eastern sky were paying attention to the battle of the Slaughter Palace through various methods. As long as there were celestial emperors involved in a great battle, it would always attract attention. Today, 3 Calamity Race celestial emperors had charged into eastern sky. This matter naturally couldn't be hidden from everyone. At the extreme west of eastern sky, in a yellow desert that floated in the starry sky, the Yellow Turban Great Emperor was secretly watching the battle of the Slaughter Palace through a mirage-like technique. When he heard Ning Fan's words, he sneered disdainfully. Humph! This brat thinks that he can kill the 3 immortal emperors of southern heaven just because he has Bai Di and Luo Ho in his camp? He has really underestimated immortal emperors too much. Or does this brat think that he is invincible just because he inherited the title of the 8th generation killing emperor? Foolish. As for Luo Ho, he is strong but he insisted on getting involved in this mess. It's fine if he really becomes an emperor. It's hard to tell who will win today. However, he hasn't become an emperor after all. If he dies in this great calamity, he only has himself to blame. It's really satisfying. When he talked about Luo Ho, Yellow Turban Great Emperor's face was filled with resentment. Obviously, he was still brooding over the incident where he was forced to retreat by Luo Ho's 3 punches a few months ago. When he talked about Ning Fan, Yellow Turban Great Emperor's expression was filled with disdain. He did not put Ning Fan in his eyes at all. He deeply believed that Ning Fan's words would only bring humiliation to himself in the end. He would become another laughingstock of the Eastern Heaven. There were also a few other immortal emperors of Eastern Heaven who had the same thought. All of them also looked down on Ning Fan. Even though the disciples of Emperor Chong He, Emperor Mo He and Emperor Chong He had entered the inner area of the Supreme Pill Sacred Region and brought back shocking information, It still did not make Emperor Chonghe and the other two immortal emperors pay any attention to Ning Fan. It was because the information was too ridiculous and it was hard to convince them. Going too far was as bad as not going far enough. This was exactly the situation. This brat has the ability to kill immortal emperors? Are you kidding me? That day, he couldn't even withstand a casual attack from me. Fei Lei's words can't be trusted. On the flamboyant mountain, Great Emperor Chonghe watched everything that was happening in the slaughter palace through a white ape water mirror and said disdainfully, "This brat is too arrogant. Today, the slaughter palace's fate has come to an end. However, my disciple actually said that this brat Ning Fan has the power to force the sacred mountain to hide. Could it be that my disciple was unknowingly affected by his illusory technique and was given false memories?" On a certain abandoned cultivation planet, Great Emperor Mo, he seemed to have sensed something and said disdainfully after he finished devouring the power of the stars, "What's wrong with the Supreme Pill Sacred Region? Why did they let such a junior cause so many rumors? Why didn't they kill him in the sacred region? What a waste of my effort. Besides, did the immemorial lightning cauldron really fall into his hands in the end? I still don't believe it." In the Supreme Pill Divine City, a great Emperor Primal Core said with a puzzled tone. In the dark race, there was a dying old man who was as skinny as a match. His body was pierced with black rods. His eyes were wide open and unblinking. Like a dried corpse, he lay in a huge coffin that had no lid. The coffin was made of some unknown black stone from outer space. There was an unfathomable power flowing around it. If it wasn't because of the life force that was deeply hidden in the coffin, most people would probably think that it was a corpse that died with grievances. Outside the coffin, there were 5 quasi-saints and 11 immortal emperors of the dark race serving the old man. All of them were extremely respectful towards him. It was as if this dying old man's status in the dark race was higher than all the immortal emperors and quasi-saints. It was unbelievable. A great expert of the dark race showed the battle in the massacre hall to the dying old man through a black mirror. However, the dying old man's eyes were blank and unfocused. It was as if he wasn't watching the battle at all. It seems like the old ancestor isn't interested in the successor of ancient chaos, a great expert of the dark race guessed. I can't say that he isn't interested. In the beginning, the old ancestor must have been interested in this young man. Otherwise, he wouldn't have ordered me to issue a battle invitation to this young man. He also wouldn't have asked us to watch this battle to see his strength. Maybe it's because of this young man's arrogant words that the old ancestor had lost his interest in this young man. After all, the old ancestor's lifelong wish is to defeat ancient chaos in a fair and square manner. It's fine even if it's just a disciple. However, if the opponent is a successor of ancient chaos with an imperfect temperament, he won't feel any satisfaction even if he defeats him. The old ancestor should be very disappointed right now. Another great expert answered. The dying old man's eyes in the black coffin were filled with unwillingness, disdain, hatred, and many other emotions. But soon, his eyes turned blank again. The 100 seedlings of our dark race have been waiting for him in the dark continent for a long time. This young man doesn't even dare to accept the challenge. What a coward! It's no wonder that the old ancestor thinks that this young man doesn't even have the value to kill him. The funniest thing is that the 7th young emperor of our dark race, In Luo Sha, who has the highest innate potential, actually agreed with that unreliable Taoist Bai Zhu. They both exaggerated Ning Fan's strength, saying that he had even killed an immortal emperor in the Supreme Pill Sacred Region. He even attacked the sacred mountain and fooled a few quasi-saints of the great desolate race. It's simply nonsense. Even a 3-year-old child wouldn't believe such words. The dark race and the south race were discussing Ning Fan fervently. However, unlike the dark race who looked down on Ning Fan, the south race firmly believed Ning Fan's arrogant words. After all, the clone of the southern race's quasi-saint, Man Daosen, was killed by Ning Fan with a single palm strike. Since he could even kill a quasi-saint's clone with a single palm strike, how difficult would it be to kill a few immortal emperors? Tantai Weiyu smiled as he found it interesting. The few quasi-saint grandfathers seemed to be afraid of Ning Fan like a tiger. Every time they talk about him, they would become nervous. It couldn't be more interesting. Even if the true strength Ning Fan displayed today was not as terrifying as the time when he killed a quasi-saint with a palm strike, these few old men would probably think that Ning Fan was purposely holding back his strength and purposely going easy on them. Weiyu, this Ning Fan is very scary. He is definitely an ancient great cultivator who is hiding his cultivation base. Just watch. The Calamity race has kicked an iron plate and is going to suffer. After all, even if it's Calamity Battle, it's impossible for him to kill my clone with a single move. Calamity Battle is no match for this young man. What ancient great cultivator who is hiding his cultivation base? Bullshit. In my opinion, this young man's identity as the successor of the ancient chaos era might even be fake. He is just the second incarnation of the ancient chaos great emperor using an unknown divine ability. If that's the case, the ancient chaos heartbeat just now was probably leaked to heaven and earth when he was handing over the cultivation base of his first incarnation. However, after that, he concealed his cultivation base perfectly again just to hide this matter. He is the ancient chaos great emperor himself. Otherwise, why would he have the ancient chaos heartbeat right after he went to the divine tomb? It's possible. It's highly possible. It's highly possible. This Ning Fan really can't be provoked. He definitely can't be provoked. He definitely can't be provoked. In the entire Eastern Heaven, perhaps only the Southern clan had full confidence in Ning Fan. However, this kind of confidence was actually wrong. It was so wrong that they did not know whether to laugh or cry. Tentai Weiyu, who was cunning on the inside, would never tell his grandfathers about Ning Fan's true cultivation base because it was really interesting to see their frightened faces. Before this battle, everyone except the Southern clan was looking down on Ning Fan. Emperor Fu Shan rushed out violently. The Dao laws along the way collapsed and the Great Dao was crushed by him. At the same time when he arrived, Ning Fan activated the cross-shaped halo that he had just created. Ning Fan's entire body stood in the middle of the cross-shaped halo like an inviolable ancient deity. A vast aura constantly spread out from his body, giving Emperor Fu Shan a huge sense of oppression. Emperor Fu Shan's heart skipped a beat. That sense of oppression made him shudder. However, he forcefully suppressed it and turned it into an even stronger disdain. He did not believe that Ning Fan could give him such a strong sense of oppression. It's fake. Everything is fake. This sense of oppression is just some kind of hidden trick. It must be. He wanted to use an immortal emperor illusory technique to kill Ning Fan here and now and expose his disguise. He wanted to tell Ning Fan why immortal emperors were high and mighty existences that could not be humiliated. Bang! Emperor Fu Shan, who was advancing forward, suddenly exploded. There was no blood mist. Instead, a large amount of white flesh scattered in all directions in the starry sky. A fishy smell suddenly entered Ning Fan's nose. If one looked carefully, one would notice that the white-colored pieces of flesh weren't flesh at all, and they were clearly countless tiny white-colored maggots that were wriggling about and devouring the Grand Dao. It was extremely strange. Those white maggots emitted boundless illusory power, giving people an unfathomable feeling. Be it immortal Loli or Luo Ho or Lu Wen, all of them could no longer hold themselves back at this moment. They wanted to help Ning Fan resist the illusory technique of this immortal emperor of the Disaster Clan. The sense of danger that this illusory technique brought to everyone made them shudder. Even the immortal Loli, whose mind was greatly damaged, could not see through the illusion. One could imagine how terrifying the power of the illusion was. Ning Fan's eyes, however, were calm. He allowed the countless illusion maggots to engulf him and attach themselves to his body, devouring his flesh and blood. When the pain spread across his body, it was as if he did not feel any pain at all. Under the activation of the cross-shaped halo, his mastery of illusions had reached its peak. If Emperor Fu Shan had used other skills to attack him, he might have to put up some defense. But if it was an illusion, he could just counter it. His illusion was personally taught by the Sword Ancestor. It was taught by Ji Qingling. Yes, she taught him. Ning Fan's eyes flashed with bitterness for a moment. Then he calmed down. On top of the cross-shaped halo, 100,000 ink marks emitted towering demonic chi. Then, a scene flashed across heaven and earth. Ning Fan, who was being devoured by countless maggots, suddenly changed his position. The person who was being devoured by the maggots was no longer Ning Fan but Emperor Fushan, who was caught off guard. Ning Fan stood at the side and scathed, quietly watching Emperor Fushan being devoured by his illusion technique. As the maggots devoured him, Emperor Fushan suddenly coughed out blood. However, even the blood he coughed out contained maggots. His sea of consciousness was also invaded by maggots. Since this technique was an illusion technique, of course, it would not only attack his physical body but also his sea of consciousness. Emperor Fushan could feel the injuries on his sea of consciousness. The pain of his sea of consciousness being devoured by the thought-devouring maggots was countless times more painful than being executed by 1,000 cuts. This is the reflection of an illusion technique. Impossible. How could you possibly reflect an illusion technique of such a level? This is a secret technique that my clan leader personally taught me. Emperor Fushan suddenly performed a hand seal and stopped the illusion technique. However, his body was already injured quite badly. Ning Fan had already put him at a disadvantage in just a single exchange. Helian Xuanzong and Shanghai Emperor, who were about to attack the slaughter hall, were startled. They stopped their fleeing lights and stood quietly on the spot, watching this unimaginable scene. Immortal Venerate actually gained the upper hand right from the beginning when he was fighting against an immortal emperor. How is this possible? Could it be that this young man's combat strength is already comparable to an ancient immortal Venerate? Ning Fan ignored Emperor Fushan's words. He did not plan to waste time talking to his opponent in today's battle. After all, even though the cross-shaped halo was strong, it could not be kept open for too long. He must end the battle as soon as possible. The rapid consumption of his mental strength made him feel exhausted. Since he had paid the price, he would make his opponent pay more in order for this technique to be meaningful. Ning Fan took a step forward and his figure suddenly disappeared from his original spot. Emperor Fushan did not even see Ning Fan move, but he already felt a sharp pain on his neck. Ning Fan had already grabbed his neck and lifted him up high. One of them was Ning Fan, who had an ordinary physique, while the other was Emperor Fushan, who was as fat as a mountain of meat. The scene of the thin man lifting the fat man up high was rather comical. However, no one could laugh out loud. This scene would only shock them. They were astounded by Ning Fan's terrifying strength that could easily humiliate an immortal emperor. The area that the cross-shaped halo covered suddenly increased to 1,000 zhang. It was as if as long as one is within it, he would be in Ning Fan's absolute domain. Emperor Fushan, who was being grabbed by the neck by Ning Fan, felt the worst humiliation of his life. He wished he could tear Ning Fan into 1,000,000 pieces. He wanted to resist and fight back, but to his horror, he found out that his body was fixed in place. He could not move at all. It was as if as long as he was within Ning Fan's cross-shaped halo, his body, primordial spirit, magic power and spirit sense would be frozen. Moreover, at the moment Ning Fan grabbed his neck, hundreds and thousands of restrictive formations appeared inside his body, sealing all the spirit insects that were living in his body. Heaven's sealing technique. The Eastern Heaven Ancestral Emperor's famous ultimate technique is executed with his finger. However, you didn't even use your finger. Impossible. This is absolutely impossible. Wait, why is my luck disappearing? Why is my magic power being plundered by you? Not good. The big umbrella of luck is about to collapse. Let go of me. Let go of me now. Emperor Fushan screamed anxiously. His seven-colored luck was being forcefully seized by Ning Fan in front of everyone's eyes. His magic power was being forcefully borrowed by Ning Fan in the name of a divine spirit. He could not resist. He could not suppress the fear in his heart. This scene was even more shocking and terrifying than Ning Fan killing him with a single sword strike. At this moment, he was like a fat old man who had no strength to resist Ning Fan at all. What is this cross-shaped halo? Not to mention him, even Emperor Shanghai and Elder Hellion might not be able to enter recklessly. Trash. A dignified immortal emperor was actually restrained by a mere immortal venerable with a single move. This is too cowardly. Hellion Xuanzong and Emperor Shanghai despised Emperor Fushan's incompetence. However, they could not leave him in the lurch. Their figures flashed and dashed into the range of the cross-shaped halo. They wanted to rescue him, but they were all frozen on the spot. We can't move. As soon as we enter the range of the halo, we will be directly frozen to death. How could there be such an unimaginable thing in this world? It turned out that it was not that Emperor Fushan was too useless. It was just that the ability of Ning Fan's cross-shaped halo was too unimaginable. Everyone was shocked. Be it the cultivators here or the powerful beings of the Eastern Heaven who were watching the battle from afar, other than the Southern clan who had overestimated Ning Fan, none of them could imagine that Ning Fan could easily subdue 3 immortal emperors by himself. Moreover, among the 3 emperors, there was a 7th tribulation and an 8th tribulation. Immortal Lo Li and Luo Ho, who were about to help Ning Fan, held themselves back after seeing this scene. Zhang Yu and the others who were hiding in the dark were also so shocked that they could not utter a word. They were no longer in a hurry to help Ning Fan. Xiang Bozi and the other 2 demi-saints lowered their hands at once. They wanted to see to what extent Ning Fan could achieve with his strength alone. An ancient immortal venerable? This young man's combat power is definitely close to that of an ancient immortal king, all right? As soon as the battle begins, he has already shocked everyone. Bang! Ning Fan still maintained the posture of grabbing Emperor Fushan's neck while forcefully absorbing his magic power and luck. He did not pay attention to the 2 emperors who entered the halo after him and only uttered a single word. All of a sudden, divine abilities that blotted out the sky and covered the earth appeared in the cross-shaped halo out of nowhere and attacked the 2 emperors. The 5 swords of Yin Yang pierced through them. The finger of returning ruin pressed down on their heads. The great river of oblivion swept out. Tens of thousands of lightning bolts filled the sky and devil flames burned like dragons. There was also the light of the ancient Devil Mountain breaking strike. Each of his punches landed, forming hundreds and thousands of consecutive attacks. At this moment, Ning Fan's magic power was boundless. At this moment, he could use as many attacks as he wanted inside the cross-shaped halo. He even disdained to use low-grade innate magic treasures because even the power of a low-grade innate magic treasure was not as terrifying as thousands of divine abilities stacked together. Use the body substitution insect. Abandon Fushan. Hellion Xuanzong felt his scalp going numb. If there was only one of those divine abilities that blotted out the sky, it might not make him afraid. However, when all of them were stacked together, it simply had the power to destroy the world. He did not dare to take them head-on. He shouted with a trembling voice. Emperor Shanghai immediately understood what he meant. The 2 of them used some unknown divine abilities. Suddenly, a bright light flashed and they escaped from the range of the cross-shaped halo. At their original spot, there were only 2 plump beetles left inside the halo. They seemed to have become the substitutes of the 2 emperors and were blasted into pieces by Ning Fan's series of divine abilities. As soon as the 2 emperors got out of the cross-shaped halo, they turned around and fled without saying a word. This scene made Emperor Fushan completely give up all hope. He also had a body substitution insect which was sealed by Ning Fan in advance. In that case, he could not even activate the insect in his body. He could only wait for death. His heart was filled with despair. He silently scolded the other 2 emperors for being cold-blooded and heartless. They only cared about their own lives and abandoned him. However, he also knew that if the other 2 emperors were pinched by Ning Fan, he would certainly abandon his companions and run away. Staying behind was equivalent to courting death unless they could find a way to break Ning Fan's cross-shaped halo. However, it was obvious that they could not think of a solution in such a short period of time. The only thing they could do was to flee. Otherwise, they would end up like him. However, they could not escape. Just as the 2 emperors were about to flee, Zhang Yu made her move. Moonlight suddenly flashed in the starry sky. Then, tens of thousands of cultivators of the Thousand Years sect appeared in front of the two emperors. They spread out their wings in a half-moon formation and surrounded the two emperors like a pocket. They were waiting for the moment when the two emperors tried to escape to stop them. The tens of thousands of cultivators of the Thousand Years sect were all carefully selected by Zhang Yu. For today's trap, she had already practiced a certain kind of formation of the vast cold sect for a long time. The ancient heaven burial formation. Zhang Yu. The word burial was related to this formation. This formation required the cooperation of a large number of cultivators. It could only be used when she was at her peak condition. Today was the day to use it. Hellion Xuanzong and Emperor Shanghai did not expect that there would be enemies ambushing them on their way out. They were caught off guard and fell into the ancient heaven burial formation. They were horrified. Even though the sense of danger that this formation gave them was not as strong as Ning Fan's cross-shaped halo domain, it was still very frightening. It sent chills down their spines. As soon as they entered the formation, they felt their heads buzzing and dizzy. 50 to 60% of their magic power was directly sealed. When they looked at Zhang Yu, who was in charge of the formation again, they were almost scared to death. Due to her injuries, Zhang Yu's qi was a little weak. However, after absorbing part of the power of Ning Fan's extreme yang water, she really became a half-step quasi-saint realm expert. Moreover, she was slowly advancing towards the quasi-saint realm. Half-step quasi-saint realm. Why did the Slaughter Palace invite such strong reinforcements? Not good. Let's go. The two of them wanted to escape from the ancient heaven burial formation. However, entering the formation was easy, but getting out was as difficult as ascending to heaven. Zhang Yu was in charge of the formation flags. Ouyang Nuan, He Xiaoyan, Old Wu and Zhu Er were each in charge of a secondary formation flag. As for the tens of thousands of cultivators, they were in charge of the secondary formation flags. In the center of the formation, tens of thousands of formation flags shook. Moonlight shone brightly in the starry sky. Then, an immortal emperor that was completely condensed from moonlight appeared in the grand formation. His body was illusory and his eyes were hollow. Great Emperor Tong Huan of the Ancient Wei sect is here to receive the order. I am willing to pledge my loyalty to my master, Zhang Yu. That was the remnant will of an ancient emperor who had died in Zhang Yu's hands. As soon as the formation was activated, he would be under Zhang Yu's control and become a puppet of the formation. As soon as that immortal Emperor Yu Guang appeared, he immediately rushed towards Emperor Fu Shan and Emperor Shanghai. His mind was only filled with the word, slaughter. After that, more and more immortal emperors of the Moonlight Immortal Emperors appeared in the surroundings, presenting the ancient devil name of immortal concubine Zhang Yu to the world. Zhai Xingzi of the Star-Picking Valley is here to receive the order. I am willing to pledge my loyalty to my master, Zhang Yu. Cheng Kong and Qing Yi of the South Desert Sect is here to receive the order. I am willing to pledge my loyalty to my master, Zhang Yu. Ancient Demon Feng Yun of the Sea Demon Clan is here to receive the order. I am willing to pledge my loyalty to my master, Zhang Yu. White Dragon of the Ancient Desolate Immortal Domain is here to receive the order. I am willing to pledge my loyalty to my master, Zhang Yu. Ancient Devil Feng Du is here to receive the order. I am willing to pledge my loyalty to my master, Zhang Yu. Among these immortal emperors, the lowest cultivation level was at the 6th Tribulation Realm. There were 7th Tribulation and 8th Tribulation Immortal Emperors. There were even 2 9th Tribulation Immortal Emperors. 19, 20, 21, 22. When the 23rd Immortal Emperor Yu Guang appeared in the formation, no more immortal emperors appeared. In Zhang Yu's life, the number of immortal emperors she killed was certainly not limited to these. However, there were many people who didn't give her the chance to collect their souls into the formation and forcefully took them as slaves. After all, it was the Antiquity era and not the Dharma Ending era where immortal emperors were rare. For the sake of the Zido immortal domain, she fought in all directions and inevitably killed immortal emperors. This kind of achievement was not strange at all. However, in the Dharma Ending era, this kind of achievement was somewhat shocking. After all, in the entire Eastern Heaven, there were only 10 or so immortal emperors on the surface. Even if she wanted to kill them, she wouldn't be able to find such a number. Exclamations sounded everywhere. Zhang, immortal concubine Zhang Yu. She is immortal concubine Zhang Yu. She actually lived from the Antiquity era until today. The Sky Burial Grand Formation. Those who are killed by this formation will become Zhang Yu's slave if they don't have any tricks up their sleeves. Even in the ancient era, very few people knew about this formation. Even if ordinary immortal emperors knew about it, they wouldn't be able to use it. It's said that immortal concubine Zhang Yu was able to use it because she had a fortuitous encounter in her early years. To think that the Rain Lord still has such strong reinforcements under his command. He has really kept us in the dark. The power of the great ancient emperors isn't something that immortal Emperor Doomsday can imagine. In the past, immortal concubine Zhang Yu was only at the peak of the 9 tribulations, yet she was able to dominate the world. After the Doomsday rebirth, her cultivation base rose to the half-step quasi-sage level, becoming even more terrifying than before. How many people in this world can stop her? I believe that the Rain Lord must have paid a great price to get the proud Zhang Yu immortal concubine to help him. Wrong, they had all guessed wrong. When Ning Fan asked Zhang Yu to help him, he did not have to pay much of a price at all. All he had to do was to compensate Zhang Yu with his body. Then, Zhang Yu scolded him angrily and no one dared to disobey him. Zhang Yu enjoyed the feeling of being the center of attention. He happily controlled the array flags and commanded the 23 immortal emperors to besiege Helian Xuanzong and Shanghai Monarch. The substitution insect was extremely precious. Even the immortal emperors of the disaster race only had one. They couldn't escape the Sky Burial Grand Formation anymore. They could only fight desperately against the attacks of the immortal emperors. 23-2. Zhang Yu's side also had 2 9 tribulations immortal emperors. There was no suspense in this battle. Moreover, these 2 immortal emperors of the disaster race couldn't escape the Sky Burial Grand Formation. It was only a matter of time before they died. Damn it, damn it, damn it. Are we really going to die here? If we knew that the Massacre Palace had such power... Monarch Fushan and the others were in despair. They regretted coming here. In the starry sky, a quasi-sage of the disaster race who had been hiding for a long time couldn't bear it anymore. He was the 6th elder of the disaster race, Hofeng. As strong as the disaster race was, they only had a dozen or so immortal emperors. If 3 of them died here at once, it would be a huge loss for the disaster race. Even if he might be killed by the saintly desolate sword if he made a move now, Hofeng couldn't care less. He had to save these 3 immortal emperors. Unfortunately, before Hofeng could use his divine power, he felt his body lighten. He was forcefully teleported to a place 100,000 stars away from the slaughter planet. He was shocked. He thought, I'm a first-level demisage. If the opponent can teleport me away so easily, it must be at least a 2nd-level demisage. Hofeng's eyes widened in anger. It was Taoist Musong, Xiang Bozi, and Old Man Hudu who tore apart heaven and earth and walked out. They were the ones who teleported Hofeng away. Let's not get involved in the quarrel between the younger generation. Or do you want to play with us 3 old guys by yourself? Musong said threateningly. He squinted his eyes and a purple light flashed. The enormous aura of a 2nd-level demisage scared Hofeng so much that he didn't dare to move recklessly. Musong, Xiang Bozi, put it. Have the 3 of you made up your mind to go against the disaster race? Don't you know what will happen to you if you offend our race? Hofeng gritted his teeth and said, he was very unfamiliar with the Eastern Heaven, but it was impossible for him not to be familiar with the Eastern Heaven's quasi-saints. After all, there were only a few sage to be in the world. At our level, we only need a reason to attack. It's impossible for us to be restrained by anything. This Ning Fan has a reason to make us attack. That's enough. I'll give you 3 breaths. If you don't get lost, I'll let you go back to the disaster race lying on the ground. Musong's tone was extremely domineering. He did not put Hofeng in his eyes at all. He could see that Huafeng was just a newcomer who had just advanced to the quasi-saint realm several million years ago. There was still a huge gap between him and Xiang Bozi and the others. How could he be compared to him? He had always been this unsociable, cold, and arrogant to everyone. Good. Very good. 3 rogue saints of the Eastern Heaven, remember this. Sooner or later, our disaster race will get back at you. Huafeng was so angry that he laughed. However, he also understood that with the 3 of them blocking his way, even if his clan leader comes personally, he might not be able to save them. Thus, he could only flick his sleeves and leave. Anger. His heart was filled with anger. He was angry at the 3 rogue saints of the Eastern Heaven's presumptuous behavior and the incompetence of Heli and Xuanzong and the other 2 immortal emperors. The 3 dignified emperors were actually captured by Ning Fan. They did not even have the chance to escape. Good. Very good. This slaughter palace has really produced an extraordinary 8th generation. Other than the 1st generation, there was no other generation that could make Huafeng so fearful. He even felt a trace of coldness in his heart. Once this young man really grows up, I can't give him this chance. As soon as he returns to the clan, he wanted to ask his clan leader to use the must-kill command of the Southern Heaven ancient world to hunt him down. Tens of breaths after Huafeng left in a disheveled manner, 2 earth-shattering sounds of self-destruction resounded from the direction of the slaughter star. It was Helian Xuanzong and Emperor Sanghai who chose to self-destruct when they saw that they were going to die, but they were unwilling to be humiliated like Emperor Fushan. Emperor Fushan closed his eyes in pain. He knew that he was also not far from death. The only difference was that he would die a more humiliating and useless death than the other 2 emperors. At the very least, these 2 emperors had died in battle. They were killed by ancient existences like Zhang Yu or killed by the 23 emperors. As for him, he was killed by Ning Fan, who was an immortal venerate from the ancient times. Moreover, he only used a single move against Ning Fan before he was captured alive. That was the only illusion technique he used, and it was reflected by Ning Fan. He could not even self-destruct. However, he was stubborn. Even when his magic power was exhausted and his golden primordial spirit was extracted by Ning Fan, he did not beg Ning Fan to spare his life. From the beginning to the end, this was probably the only thing he had that could make the descendants of the Calamity clan remember him a little. When Emperor Fushan was refined into a pill by Ning Fan, everyone's heart skipped a beat. They were astounded by Ning Fan's lawlessness and strength. He even dared to use the primordial spirit of an immortal emperor of the secret race to concoct pills. Is there anything else that he does not dare to do? Especially among the emperors of Eastern Heaven who had a small conflict with Ning Fan, they felt as if their souls were about to leave their bodies. He could kill the Southern Heaven immortal emperor with such ease. How difficult would it be for him to kill me? Great Emperor Chonghe felt a chill rush to his head and his entire body turned cold. He had schemed against Ning Fan on the flamboyant mountain. Would Ning Fan pursue the matter? What if he does? This 8th Slaughter Emperor is simply a monster. On this day, the entire Eastern Heaven was in an uproar. 3 Southern Heaven immortal emperors died at the entrance of the Slaughter Palace. They did not even have the chance to escape. The 8th Slaughter Emperor, Ning Fan, had become a nightmare that could not be erased in the hearts of countless cultivators of Eastern Heaven. Even 8th Tribulation great emperors like the Divine Void Emperor and Emperor Tsong were fearful of him. No one dared to mock the 8th Slaughter Emperor for having an undeserved reputation. No one dared to look down on the Slaughter Palace anymore. On the Dark Continent, when the 100 geniuses of the Dark Race heard the news, they all requested their seniors to cancel the battle with Ning Fan. Just a moment ago, they were still mocking Ning Fan for not daring to accept the challenge. Now, they wished that Ning Fan would never come. This kind of monster could even easily kill an immortal emperor. Even if 100 of them gathered together, how could they be Ning Fan's opponent? If they fight, they would definitely die. Even if it was the old ancestors' order, they were not willing to die in vain. Once the Black Cross Halo was activated, it could kill an immortal emperor like a dog. It was too terrifying. All the devil cultivators of Eastern Heaven were spreading the news of Ning Fan's glorious battle achievements. Countless people were calling for Ning Fan to be the new #1 devil of Eastern Heaven. The #1 devil of Eastern Heaven was really just an empty title. It was not as beneficial as the title of Shadi. However, in the eyes of some devils, the title of the #1 devil of Eastern Heaven was obviously more resounding than Shadi. Have you heard? Rain Lord used the evil guilty halo to beat the 3 immortal emperors to the point that they could not fight back. What evil guilty halo? It's obviously the dog slaughtering halo. It means that killing immortal emperors is like slaughtering dogs. No, all of you are wrong. This kind of absolute art is obviously called the immortal execution halo. I have seen it in some ancient records. It specializes in killing immortal emperors. Nonsense. It's obviously the ability that Rain Lord created himself. How could there be any ancient records that recorded it? The immortal execution halo is not suitable. It's more accurate to call it the black hole halo. After all, rumor has it that once the cross-shaped halo is activated, it is exactly the same as the cross-shaped halo of the black hole in the universe. The only difference is that the black hole's halo is white while Rain Lord's halo is black. It doesn't sound good. It doesn't sound good at all. Isn't it more appropriate to call it the Rain Halo? After all, it's Rain Lord. Then I say it should be called the Slaughter Halo. After all, it's the 8th generation Shadi. It should be called the Thousand Autumns Halo because its old ancestor Thousand Autumns. It should be called. How about the Ancient Chaos Halo? It's not the ability that was created by the Ancient Chaos Great Emperor. If you call it that, people will misunderstand. Then it's called the Ancient Chaos Inheritor Halo? It doesn't sound good either. It's better to call it the Unbreakable Halo. After all, many old monsters of the eastern sky are studying how to break this technique, but they have no clue. It can be said to be unbreakable, because Ning Fan had not given the cross-shaped halo a name. Some devil cultivators of the eastern sky had begun to stick to their own ideas and randomly named Ning Fan's newly created absolute technique. A single type of heaven sealing technique was enough to make the Eastern Sky Ancestral Emperor's name go down in history. Among Ning Fan's cross-shaped halos, there were countless abilities that were at the same level as the heaven sealing technique. This level of absolute art had certainly surpassed many of the ancient legendary figures. This ability was enough to go down in history. If it did not have a resounding name, wouldn't it be a pity? A few months passed in the blink of an eye. The enthusiasm of the Eastern Sky's cultivators towards this matter had not decreased in the slightest. On the contrary, many of them came to the Slaughter Palace from afar to inquire about the true name of this technique. Some of them were curious while some of them had ulterior motives. If they know the true name of this technique, they would be able to open up some ideas and find a way to break it, right? Ning Fan did not pay attention to these kind of busybodies. For several months in a row, he sat cross-legged in the starry sky, comprehending the battle on that day. The more he pondered about it, the more he felt that the cross-shaped halo was mysterious and difficult to understand. Even he, the creator of the cross-shaped halo, did not really understand some things about it. Later on, he realized that the cross-shaped halo that he created was somewhat heaven-defying. According to the ancient scriptures, the Tao can be Tao, but it's not the Tao. The name can be named, but it's not the name. Nameless, the beginning of heaven and earth. Nameless, the mother of all living beings. In the beginning, he did not give this cross-shaped halo a name because he was lazy. However, the more he thought about it, the more he felt that his cross-shaped halo did not deserve a name. Only Nameless could gather the Tao of all living beings and be called the beginning, ring. The beginning saint, ring. A few months later, he was shocked. It turned out that the cross-shaped halo that he had comprehended was actually a kind of embryonic form of the beginning Saint Ring. However, it was not the ordinary form of the beginning Saint Ring. Instead, it was 2 halos that intersected with each other, giving people a demonic feeling. It was a posture that no longer existed. What have I actually created? If the ring that I created is the beginning Saint Ring, why is it different from Sin Luo's beginning Saint Ring? It is different from all the other rings that I have seen along the way. The Tao is like a ring. The Tao of others expands outwards. Thus, as their cultivation base increases, the diameter of the ring will constantly increase. The world that it comes into contact with will also become bigger and bigger. However, I am different. My Tao is to protect. Thus, the purpose of my circle is not to become bigger but to protect the center of the circle. Instead, it is to strengthen this ring on the original foundation. Is it because of this reason that the beginning Saint Ring became 2 and the cross is even more secure? Ning Fan could only guess. He was not even sure if the halo that he created was the embryonic form of the beginning Saint Ring. He even consulted his eldest senior brother about this matter. However, even his eldest senior brother could not give him a definite answer. I can't see through this ability of yours. If you continue to cultivate it, I wonder what kind of changes it will have. However, I have seen this sentence in some of the top secret scrolls of the Northern Dipper immortal domain. It seems to be related to your cross-shaped halo. First came the gods, then came the immortals. Once the path to immortality is opened, the incense will continue. The true world and the ancient celestial realm were formed after the ancient celestial realm was destroyed, which was why they contain the power of reincarnation and could give birth to all manner of living. The sages imitate reincarnation. The creation sages, the nirvana sages, and the desolate saint rings all imitate the mysteries of reincarnation in the immortal spirit domain. However, before the immortal spirit domain, there is actually the divine spirit domain. The first generation replied as such. Even the Slayer felt a trace of fear from the Black Cross halo. Ning Fan might have created something that should not exist in this world. Ning Fan might have created something called the divine spirit domain. First, there was the divine spirit domain. Then, there was the immortal spirit domain. Then, there was the true world's immortal cultivators and the halo of a saint. Ning Fan's ring was not an imitation of the saint human ring. If one were to insist on it, it was highly possible that it was a kind of atavism which was not unrelated to his status as a crippled divine spirit. I don't know much about the ancient gods. You must never mention what I've said to anyone else. You should know that the details of your cross-shaped halo could be classified as one of the top secrets of the world if one were to delve deeper into it. Remember. Don't worry, eldest senior brother. Ning Fan knows the gravity of the situation. I will never tell anyone about this. During the battle that day, you performed very well. You far exceeded my expectations. I kind of understand why the 7th generation valued you so much. With you around, I can be at ease. One day, you will surpass me and become the strongest in the history of the Slaughter Palace. How I wish I could be lucky enough to see that day. I will definitely let you see it. Chapter 1103. A few months later, another piece of shocking news spread across the entire Eastern Heaven. The 3000th Underworld had actually built an interdomain teleportation formation with the Slaughter Star and officially announced that they would merge with the Qianqiu sect, becoming a subordinate force of the sect. That's right. It was becoming a subordinate force of the Qianqiu sect and not the Slaughter Palace. They only listened to Ning Fan and not anyone else in the Slaughter Palace. If this happened before Ning Fan killed the immortal emperor, everyone would think that White Emperor Lan Yunxian had lost her mind. She would rather give up her position as an immortal emperor and become someone else's subordinate. However, Ning Fan had already proven his terrifying strength to the entire Eastern Heaven. Besides, he already had an ancient existence like immortal concubine Zhang Yu as his subordinates. Thus, it was not unacceptable for him to have another White Emperor. This matter further confirmed a rumor which was that White Emperor Lan Yunxian really loved Ning Fan and their relationship was not shallow. Whether they were really father and daughter or not, no one knew. However, with Ning Fan's bad reputation in terms of women, everyone would think in another direction and make guesses. Countless old monsters of the Eastern Heaven who admired White Emperor were heartbroken. There were many people who envied Ning Fan's luck with women. Of course, no one dared to go to the Slaughter Palace and cause trouble for Ning Fan because of this matter. Time flew. In the blink of an eye, 10 years had passed since the battle that day. 10 years ago, 3 emperors of the Calamity race had fallen in the Slaughter Palace. However, they did not seem to know about it at all. They actually did not use any means to take revenge. It made people's imaginations run wild and speculated about it. During these 10 years, Ning Fan had been comprehending the cross-shaped halo and gradually gained some insights. In the beginning, when he was at his peak state, he could activate the cross-shaped halo for 224 breaths, which was his limit. However, after 10 years of comprehension, the duration of the cross-shaped halo had increased to 227 breaths. Although it was just an extra 3 breaths, these 3 breaths were enough for Ning Fan to kill many more enemies in his peak state. It was considered a significant improvement. When Ning Fan roughly comprehended the cross-shaped halo, he knew that it would become the strongest technique among all the techniques he possessed in the future. This cross-shaped halo was a type of technique that had a huge room for growth. It was a collection of abilities. The more techniques and abilities Ning Fan mastered, the stronger the cross-shaped halo would be. Killing Emperor Fushan back then was just the tip of the iceberg of this cross-shaped halo. Ning Fan used Zhang Yu and the immortal Loli to test it repeatedly. Once he activates the cross-shaped halos, it would not be difficult for him to kill a 6th Tribulation Immortal Emperor if he catches them by surprise. He also has a high chance of killing a 7th Tribulation Immortal Emperor. However, immortal emperors who are above the 8th Tribulation Immortal Emperor would have a high chance of escaping from his cross-shaped halos. Moreover, this was still an unexpected situation. If it was those Eastern Skies' various kings who had repeatedly researched the cross-halo for 10 years, they would have most likely already thought of some methods to deal with this cross-halo. The fact that he had been able to kill the Disaster Race's 3 sovereigns so easily back then was because this technique was new. The 3 sovereigns did not have much time to think about the technique's flaws. If it was an immortal emperor who had studied this technique for 10 years, it would not be easy to kill him. There was no such thing as an invincible power in this world, and there was no such thing as eternal invincibility. If he entered the cross-shaped halo, he would be captured without a fight. Wouldn't it be fine if he just kept his distance and didn't enter? Let's use ranged attacks to determine the victor. Was Ning Fan's speed too heaven-defying when he activated the cross-shaped halos? Would he close in and forcefully activate his halo? Then, he had to think of a way to prevent himself from getting close to him. Even if he managed to get close to him, he was not really helpless. Didn't the 2 immortal emperors of the Disaster Race escape by using a substitute technique? There were many other similar techniques. As long as he was not as useless as Emperor Fushan, who was completely suppressed the moment he appeared, everything would be fine. 10 years had passed. Great Emperor Ancient Chaos seemed to have completely disappeared from the world. Everyone thought that he had already perished. What was strange was that the Dark Race actually did not launch a large-scale attack. 10 years had passed. Ning Fan's luck had improved from the 4th color to the 5th color. This was naturally thanks to him absorbing the 7-colored luck of Emperor Fushan that day. 10 years had passed. Ning Fan had searched for ancient techniques everywhere and secretly unsealed the immemorial lightning cauldron. Then, he devoured the Eastern Mountain Divine Lightning inside the cauldron. The immemorial lightning cauldron was a mid-grade innate magic treasure. As time passed, it could absorb the power of heaven and earth and continuously produce the Eastern Mountain Divine Lightning inside the cauldron. Very few people knew what benefits Ning Fan had obtained after devouring the Eastern Mountain Divine Lightning. Only a few cultivators of the Thousand Years sect and the Slaughter Palace saw that on the day when Ning Fan completely refined the Divine Lightning, there was an extremely small trace of innate lightning that split heaven and earth in the vicinity of the Slaughter Star. Together with the power of the innate Devil Flame, it formed an extremely unique lightning flame. There were rumors that Ning Fan, the 8th Slaughter Emperor, had successfully cultivated the innate lightning and innate Devil Flame in the past 10 years. Then he merged the lightning and flame together, improving his strength to a whole new level. 10 years had passed. Ning Fan had already obtained the heaven-splitting stone from Xiang Bozi and repaired the God Extermination Shield. 10 years had passed and he had truly recovered to his peak state. In the past 10 years, the eastern heaven that was plagued with wars had also been involved in various battles. However, none of them had anything to do with Ning Fan. However, on a certain day 10 years later, a battle invitation was suddenly sent from the Dark Continent and it was directed at Ning Fan. It was the third battle invitation sent by the Dark Race. It was as if the Dark Race was waiting for Ning Fan to fully comprehend the cross-shaped halos and adjust himself to his peak state before issuing a formal challenge to Ning Fan. This time, the battle invitation no longer contained those humiliating and provocative words. This time, there was only one word written in the battle invitation. It was written with the power of the Dark Realm Master. Fight. When Ning Fan opened the battle invitation, the power of the Dark Realm Master that was contained in that single word actually caused the entire Slaughter Star to turn dark for a moment, losing all its light. It was unknown who wrote this battle invitation. Ning Fan could not tell the exact cultivation base of the person who wrote it either. However, the terrifying killing intent it contained was no small matter. Even someone like Ning Fan who had experienced killing for a long time could not help but suck in a cold breath. An ancient great cultivator, even though the battle invitation did not reveal any chi of his cultivation base, Ning Fan could still tell that the person who wrote it was an ancient great cultivator. The fact that there was actually an ancient great cultivator in the Dark Race shocked Ning Fan greatly. Moreover, the impression that the Dark Race gave Ning Fan had always been sinister, cowardly, despicable, and shameless. However, only this time did this battle invitation give Ning Fan a sense of righteousness. Well, it was no wonder that the ancient great cultivators and the ordinary cultivators of the Dark Race would have different standards of tolerance. Ancient great cultivators had their own pride. It was true that this person wanted to kill Ning Fan, but he disdained to use sinister methods to deal with an ancient immortal venerate. This kind of disdain was not fear. It was different from the ordinary cultivators of the Dark Race who feared ancient chaos and did not dare to act recklessly. The words of the ancient great cultivator who wrote the third battle invitation were filled with killing intent, dominance, ruthlessness, but there was no fear. This person was not afraid of ancient chaos. This person had been waiting for Ning Fan to go to the Dark Continent. The reason why he did not take the initiative to attack was because he wanted to give Ning Fan a chance to die in a dignified manner. It was not an assassination. One could even speculate that what the Dark Race did to Ning Fan in the past was not the doing of this old monster. Because if this old monster really wanted to bully the weak and kill Ning Fan, there was no need for him to get someone else to do it, and he would not care whether Ancient Chaos was dead or alive. Ancient Great Cultivator. The Dark Race has an Ancient Great Cultivator as their leader. Should I go to this decisive battle? If I go, I might die. But if I don't go, something more important will be broken because of this. The pride of being the successor of Ancient Chaos and the soul of a Tao Guardian would be broken. If the Dark Race set up an inescapable net in the Dark Continent to kill Ning Fan would certainly not foolishly go to his death. However, if the other party really wanted to have a fair duel and this duel also had the meaning of determining who was stronger between the Dark Race and the Ancient Chaos clan, he would not run away even if the other party had a great expert from the Ancient Era as their backing and even if the battle was filled with dangers. I can't win against Ancient Great Cultivators. I can't win against 1st and 2nd level Quasi-Saints. I can't even win against 8th and 9th Tribulation Immortal Emperors. However, even if I can't win against them, I'm confident that I can protect myself. Once I activate the cross-shaped halos, even ancient great cultivators won't be able to stop me. Of course, it's impossible for me to believe that they won't set up a trap just because of a battle invitation. If they are upright, I will also fight fair and square. If they are playing tricks, I will make the entire Dark Race pay for this. On this day, Ning Fan quietly left the Slaughter Palace. He did not tell anyone nor did he bring any helpers with him. A few days later, Ning Fan arrived at the Dark Continent. He wanted to fight the entire Dark Continent with his own strength. If he asks for help, Xiang Bozi and the other Quasi-Saints would definitely come to help him. However, he did not do so. It was because he understood that the Dark Race also understood that this battle was the grudge between the Dark Race and Great Emperor Ancient Chaos. The grudge would be settled among the descendants of the dark race. Ning Fan was 70% sure that the ancient great cultivators of the dark race would not interfere. In fact, even the quasi-saints would not interfere. However, he was also 30% prepared. Challenging the entire dark race with his own strength might seem arrogant. However, being alone was actually more advantageous for him to escape from this place when the situation calls for it. After all, if he is alone, he was confident that no one would be able to stop him. However, if he brings others with him, he did not have the confidence to travel freely in the territory of the ancient great cultivators. In the desolate starry sky, countless broken continents were floating in the sky. They were faintly discernible in the gloomy black mist. It was unknown how many broken continents there were in this place. No cultivator of Eastern Heaven had truly counted them. If one takes a closer look, they would realize that the black mist that lingered above the continents was actually not mist. Instead, it was tiny black insects that were hard to be seen with the naked eye. They gathered together while buzzing. On the surface, they actually looked similar to clouds of mist. However, only those who had some understanding of this continent knew how terrifying these tiny black insects were. If an ordinary true immortal was attacked by a swarm of these black insects, it would only take them a short while to devour their flesh and blood, leaving only their bones behind. This was the Dark Continent, one of the many ominous places in Eastern Heaven. Perhaps it was because the baleful qi that Ning Fan was giving off was a little too strong. After he arrived, the black mist in the vicinity began to disperse to both sides, as if it did not dare to stop him from entering. Ning Fan took a step into one of the countless continents. The moment he stepped into it, black rays of light suddenly rose into the sky from the borders of the continents and gradually spread to the distant heaven and earth. Those black rays of light connected together and turned into an incomparably massive black prison of light, enveloping the entire dark continent within it. If one were to look at it from the outside, one would realize that the entire dark continent looked like it had been wrapped inside a gigantic black egg. However, Ning Fan, who was inside it, naturally could not see it. The scenery of the continent in front of him had completely fallen into darkness. Only a few ghost flames were floating between heaven and earth, bringing a weak light to heaven and earth. Ning Fan frowned slightly. He summoned the ocean-defying sword and casually slashed at the black prison of light. However, he realized that he could not even leave a shallow mark on the prison. It only created a few ripples and the prison of light returned to normal. Ning Fan knew that the dark race must have already found out about his arrival. Thus, they used some kind of method to trap him in this place until he dies. They did not want to give him any chance to escape from the Dark Continent. However, could this black prison of light that seals the entire Dark Continent really trap him? According to the strength of the prison of light that Ning Fan had tested with his sword, it was not impossible for him to break this prison of light and escape if he uses all of his means. I am in Yuanshan. Are you the successor of ancient Luangu? The faint voice of an elderly man suddenly reverberated in the pitch-black heaven and earth. It was indistinct and it was hard to discern the origin of the voice. Ning Fan's heart immediately shuddered. And Yuanshan is the progenitor of the dark race. He actually did not die in the ancient times and is still alive today. If that's the case, the ancient great cultivator of the dark race is in Yuanshan. No wonder he is not afraid of great Emperor Luangu. He has the qualifications to do so. That's right. Even though Ning Fan knew that the other party was an ancient figure who was as famous as great Emperor Luangu, he would not have any stage fright. After all, he had seen many things in the world. Even great cultivators from the ancient times would not be able to scare him. I don't have much time left in my life. However, I must defeat ancient Luangu once in this life no matter what. Only then can I die in peace. In the past, I wasn't a match for ancient Luangu. I have fought him thousands of times, but I have never won once. However, I firmly believe that my disciple is not any weaker than ancient Luangu's successor. The reason why I sent you 3 war invitations to lure you here is to kill you and prove this to ancient Luangu. However, after witnessing your battle 10 years ago, I began to cherish your talent. If you are willing to betray ancient Luangu and join my sect, The grudges between you and my clan will be written off. I can even directly appoint you as the clan leader of the dark race and give you a position that is second only to me. The entire dark race will listen to your commands. Are you willing to do so? No matter how calm Ning Fan was, he was also stunned by Yuanshan's words. Before coming to the Dark Continent, Ning Fan had imagined thousands of confrontations with the dark race. However, he had never thought that he would be recruited by the progenitor of the dark race. If he betrays ancient Wangu, he could directly become the leader of the dark race and rule over the entire dark race. What kind of power and influence was that? What kind of importance was that? Unfortunately, no matter how powerful the power and influence was, it was just a fleeting cloud in Ning Fan's eyes. He had always remembered the kindness that the illusory old man had given him time and time again. He remembered the tradition of the Lai origin sect and his promise. He remembered the illusory but warm palm of the old man when he patted his shoulder. Ning Fan did not answer him. His expression was calm. It was a silent rejection. A gratified laughter spread across heaven and earth. And Yuanshan was actually laughing, as if he was very satisfied with Ning Fan's answer. Very good. Very good. Even such great benefits cannot sway your heart. Only then you are worthy to be the last disciple of the Lai origin sect and the disciple of ancient Wangu. You are very good. Only then will you have the value to kill me. So, the previous invitation was just a test? Don't worry. I have been in a deep slumber for many years and I rarely wake up. The methods that my clan used to deal with you in the past were not ordered by me. Today, I'll kill you in an open and above-board manner. No quasi-saint will interfere in this battle. Sure enough, Yuanshan was different from the other cultivators of the dark race. He had the pride of an ancient great cultivator. This also explained why Ning Fan received an unreasonable battle invitation as soon as he left the Supreme Pill Sacred Region. It was because the schemes of the dark race in the past were not ordered by Yuanshan. Only this battle invitation was. Then the hunt begins. Next, the entire Dark Continent will become a battlefield. With my order, whoever kills Ning Fan will be rewarded with 100 Dark Time fruits and 1,000 ancient concubines. Kill! 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 Earth-shattering cheers came from all directions. All of them were the voices of the cultivators of the dark race. As the saying goes, brave men are bound to appear when there is a great reward. After 10 years of research, the members of the dark race had done some research on Ning Fan's cross-shaped halo. They were confident that they already had a countermeasure. Today, there was only Ning Fan as the prey while there were thousands of hunters. Even though quasi-saints could not take action, immortal emperors were not restricted. Could Ning Fan leave the dark race alive? Absolutely not. It was ridiculous that Ning Fan actually dared to come here alone. His arrogance rendered everyone speechless. No matter how strong this young man's abilities are, he is just an ancient immortal venerate. As long as the cross-shaped halo is restrained, he will certainly die. The only variable was that they did not know who would be lucky enough to get the credit of killing Ning Fan. 1 billion resentment technique. Suddenly, a cold and emotionless voice came from the depths of the endless darkness. It carried the aura of a 9-tribulation immortal emperor. At the moment when the voice resounded, Ning Fan felt his body becoming lighter. His vision blurred and he was sucked away, disappearing from his original spot. At the next moment, he appeared on a massive grave. Countless ancient tombstones were circling around him. Each of the tombstones had a ghost attached to it. Their resentment was overwhelming. Ning Fan scanned the surroundings with his divine sense and his expression darkened. This place was no longer the outer region of the Dark Continent but the deepest part of the continent. There were hundreds of thousands of broken continents between them and the outer region. An illusory 9-tribulation immortal emperor that looked like ghost flames stood 10,000 zhang away from the grave. He was waving an innate peachwood sword while chanting. All of a sudden, the surroundings were filled with ghostly cries. Countless resentment waves rushed towards Ning Fan. It sounded like laughter and crying at the same time, like a devil monk chanting an incantation. It was indescribably unpleasant to the ears. As soon as he was hit by the sound waves, he felt a sharp pain in his sea of consciousness. Black blood seeped out from the corner of his mouth. He was already injured internally. Fortunately, his sea of consciousness was stronger than ordinary people. If it were other immortal venerables or immortal kings, their sea of consciousness would probably collapse and they would die after being hit by the sound waves. He actually didn't die. Immortal Emperor Ghost Flame was slightly surprised, as if he did not expect that he would end up like this after lowering his status to launch a sneak attack. Then he sneered and pointed the peachwood sword at the sky. The resentment chi of the curse instantly increased by more than 1-fold. Ning Fan smiled. So, this is the fair and upright duel that in Yuanshan mentioned. He thought that it would be a fair one-on-one duel. At worst, he would be dragged into a one-on-one battle. But it turns out that it's not the case. Besides, didn't the battle invitation say that the one who will fight him will be the 100 seedlings of the dark race? The 100 seedlings and the 100 seedlings should be the younger generation of the dark race. Why is there a 9 tribulation immortal emperor? Could it be that this old 9 tribulation immortal emperor is also one of the younger generation of the dark race? How interesting. Perhaps in Yuanshan's opinion, the fact that he did not attack Ning Fan personally and did not ask the quasi-saints to do so was already considered a kind of fairness. If this is the fair duel in Yuanshan's eyes, then there is no need for Ning Fan to hold back anymore. He had been tolerating the dark races for far too long. Qi Ning Fan took a step forward and his figure suddenly disappeared from the gigantic grave. His ghost-like speed made Immortal Emperor Ghost Flame's eyes shrink and his heart skip a beat. He was a dignified 9 tribulation immortal emperor, but he actually could not see Ning Fan's speed clearly. The astonishment in his heart was no small matter. He thought to himself, could it be that this young man can still be so fast without activating the cross-shaped halo? Isn't this a little too scary? Fortunately, when the surrounding formation light shook, the surrounding space began to shake violently. Ning Fan let out a muffled groan and his figure was pushed away by the formation light. His figure was revealed and he fell back to the gigantic grave from midair. Seeing that Ning Fan was forced back to his original spot by the formation that he had set up in advance, Immortal Emperor Ghost Flame finally calmed down a little. He had studied the cross-shaped halo for 10 years. He knew very well that as long as he could trap Ning Fan somewhere and prevent him from getting close to him, the cross-shaped halo would not pose a threat to him at all. He could easily kill Ning Fan outside of the range of the cross-shaped halo. Heavenly Dao Curse Vault. Dao Curse Ambush. Human Dao Curse Song. Immortal Emperor Ghost Flame consecutively stabbed out 3 times while maintaining a super long distance. The sound waves formed by his resentment became heavier and heavier. It tore apart the great Dao and collapsed the ground. Even heaven and earth had double shadows because of the trembling. Ning Fan felt that the injuries to his sea of consciousness were getting worse. He knew that he was no match for this Immortal Emperor Ghost Flame. Perhaps he could still have the power to fight if he activated the cross-shaped halo. However, he knew that there were thousands of cultivators from the entire dark race who participated in the hunt for him. All of them were elites of the dark race. If he uses his strongest trump card right from the start of the battle and uses up all of his mental power, he would not be able to deal with the enemies behind him. Moreover, even if he activates the cross-shaped halo, he was not confident that he could kill this Immortal Emperor Ghost Flame. His chances of winning were less than 5%. It was better for him to keep his trump card and wait for the right time. He's still not dead? Then I'll make it a little more severe. Before Immortal Emperor Ghost Flame could finish his words, his eyes suddenly shrank and his face was filled with astonishment. Ning Fan flipped his hand and the ocean-defying sword appeared in his hand. With a slash, the great force of heaven and earth was split into 2. The formation of the huge grave immediately collapsed. With another slash, millions of tombstones were destroyed by Ning Fan, creating a gap in the formation of the gravestones. Immortal Emperor Ghost Flame was shocked. He wanted to reform the tombstones and seal the space of this place, trapping Ning Fan in this place. Unfortunately, the speed at which he formed the tombstones was not as fast as Ning Fan's slashes. Ning Fan's attacks were as fast as lightning. His sword light flashed everywhere. In just an instant he had made hundreds of slashes. After that, there were only a few tombstones left in this place. The ground was filled with broken tombstones. The ghosts that were attached to the tombstones were also killed by Ning Fan. There were no longer any resentful thoughts or sound waves that attacked his sea of consciousness. He could finally hear peace and quiet. A9 Tribulation Immortal Emperor is only SOSO. Ning Fan sneered. What a vile creature. I've spent millions of years to refine these 1 billion resentful spirits. Today, you've actually killed all of them. I'm going to peel off your skin and pull out your tendons to refine you into a resentful spirit to compensate for my loss. Immortal Emperor Ghost Flame was infuriated by Ning Fan's laughter. He raised his hand and the peachwood sword in his hand immediately soared into the sky. Then, it split into 10 pieces and then into 100 pieces. Eventually, it turned into millions of swords that rained down on Ning Fan. This peachwood sword was just a low-grade innate magic treasure. However, its user's cultivation base was too high. Its power was unfathomable. It could severely injure an ordinary immortal emperor with a single strike. Ning Fan did not plan to face it head-on, nor did he plan to stay here and waste his magic power with Immortal Emperor Ghost Flame. His figure flashed. Before the rain of swords could fall on him, he had already vanished without a trace. The millions of swords missed their target and fell on the ground, splitting the entire continent into countless pieces. Not good. That little bastard actually managed to escape. Immortal Emperor Ghost Flame was extremely anxious. He was not willing to share this great achievement with others. Of course, he had to monopolize it. How could he let his prey escape? He kept the peachwood sword and rode on a 7-colored traveling light to chase after Ning Fan. However, there were millions of continents in front of him. It was boundless. Where should he go to find Ning Fan? He had no choice but to take out a compass. There was a tiny blinking dot on the tracing compass. That tiny dot represented Ning Fan's current location. Each of the cultivators of the dark race who participated in the hunt for Ning Fan had a tracing compass like this. It would be fine if Ning Fan did not enter the dark continent. However, once he enters the continent, they would use this compass to locate him. Ning Fan would have nowhere to hide. After confirming Ning Fan's location, Immortal Emperor Ghost Flame chased after him with all his might. However, since his speed was far inferior to Ning Fan's, he naturally could not catch up to him no matter how hard he tried. Currently, Ning Fan did not even need to use the black immortal cloud to shake off immortal emperors. His speed was already unimaginably fast. Not long after, the light dot disappeared from the compass. Immortal Emperor Ghost Flame cursed out of anger. This meant that the distance between him and Ning Fan had increased to tens of thousands of continents. At such a distance, even the compass would not be able to locate him. To Immortal Emperor Ghost Flame, Ning Fan had already escaped to an unknown location. The battle was temporarily halted. However, to Ning Fan, enemies were almost everywhere on this dark continent. He would run into people who wanted to kill him no matter where he went. Ning Fan and Immortal Emperor Ghost Flame had increased the distance between them by tens of thousands of continents and escaped from his compass. However, at the same time, he got on the compass of others. As his rain sense dispersed, Ning Fan could sense that there were more than 100 spirit sense locked onto him within the range of tens of thousands of continents. The weaker ones were at the sense fragment realm. They usually gathered in small groups. The stronger ones were immortal venerables, immortal kings, and even immortal emperors. All of them were chasing after him from different directions. Ning Fan revealed a cold smile. If he wanted to leave, even in Yuanshan would not be able to stop him today. However, he was not in a hurry to leave at all. Why would he be in a hurry to leave? If he did not make the dark race feel pain and show off the might of the successor of ancient chaos, what right did he have to leave? Just now, he was suppressed by the 9 tribulation immortal emperors of the dark race. However, it did not mean that the other members of the dark race could also suppress him. Screech! An ear-piercing screech suddenly resounded from the front. At the next moment, A giant black bird which was surrounded by lightning bolts suddenly appeared in front of Ning Fan. It carried more than 10 Sense Fragment Realm cultivators on its back. When those cultivators saw that they had caught up to Ning Fan, they were surprised at first. Then they were overjoyed. They took out their immortal talismans and threw them at Ning Fan. All of a sudden, hundreds and thousands of immortal talismans flew towards Ning Fan. Each of the immortal talismans carried the power of a Sense Fragment Realm cultivator. Some of the more powerful ones even had the power of an immortal venerable or immortal king. The light of the talismans shot towards Ning Fan with an indescribable aura. Ning Fan narrowed his eyes. He thought to himself, the dark race is really generous. They have even prepared so many powerful talismans for the Sense Fragment Realm cultivators. They really want to kill me at all costs. On the path of cultivation, killing one's enemies is just based on one's own means. It's not about being despicable or being fair. The fact that the dark race could distribute so many powerful talismans to Sense Fragment Realm cultivators proved that they had a solid foundation. Unfortunately, these means are still not enough to kill Ning Fan. I am the 97th disciple of the dark race. My name is Njungquang. Remember this name. After I kill you, I will be the clan leader of the dark race. Then I will let my name be remembered by the future generations. On the giant bird, a young man who looked like the leader of the group laughed greedily. He was already fascinated by the huge reward of killing Ning Fan. However, the laughter was only halfway through before it stopped. Suddenly, a ray of fiery light flashed across heaven and earth. It was like the first light of dawn that dispelled the darkness and the lightning that split the night sky. In just a flash, thousands of immortal talismans, the giant bird and the tens of Sense Fragment Realm cultivators were all turned into ashes and dispersed by the strong wind. They did not even scream. They did not even bother to leave 1 or 2 storage pouches behind. Ning Fan held the wind and fire fan in his hand and continued to advance with a cold expression. To him, destroying more than 10 Sense Fragment Realm cultivators with a single fan was not considered an impressive achievement. There were still many enemies. If it's an unnecessary battle, it's not advisable to waste too much magic power. It's better to use magic treasures to conserve magic power. As for Njungquang and the 97th disciple of the dark race, Ning Fan was too lazy to remember such complicated names and titles. Currently, he did not activate the cross-shaped halos. Thus, he could only use the life-killing technique alone. After killing more than 10 Sense Fragment Realm cultivators, his chi became slightly stronger. It was the effect of the life-killing technique. Moreover, there were also traces of memories of divine abilities that flowed into Ning Fan's sea of consciousness for no reason after killing those Sense Fragment Realm cultivators. Ning Fan knew that the Tao seizing from the void that he had comprehended in the past 10 years had finally taken effect. However, because his understanding of the Tao seizing from the void was not deep enough, the memories of the divine abilities that he obtained from killing others were very fragmented and could not be of great use. You all treat me as your prey, but I also treat you all as my prey. One of the 100 seedlings of the dark race has already been killed. There are still 99 of them left. I wonder if this Yuanshan will still be able to talk to me calmly after I kill all of them. Or perhaps the lives of the 100 seedlings of the dark race are just worthless in his eyes. Otherwise, why would he be willing to send them to hunt me down? Ning Fan sneered and dashed across the continent. In the blink of an eye, Yunyan had already locked onto the young talents of the dark race one after another. Since the others were already prepared to kill him to claim the merit, he naturally would not show them any mercy. He could not defeat the old ones, but the young ones. Chapter 1104. Dark Monarch is dead? Almost at the same time Njungquang died, the experts of the dark races who were chasing after Ning Fan sensed it and were slightly surprised. After all, Njungquang was only ranked 97th among the dark tribe's 100 seedlings. His cultivation base was just at the sense-shattering realm, which was not even at the immortal venerable realm. Thus, it was normal for him to be killed by Ning Fan. AI. It's really troublesome. Why does Ancestor have to target this ancient chaos successor? I entiendo hate trouble the most. In the dark sky, a young immortal venerable with a pair of wings on his back muttered to himself impatiently. He was the 17th dark seedling, Ndonglai. Even though he said that it would be troublesome, he still followed the guidance of the compass and chased after Ning Fan with all his might. His lazy eyes also hid a trace of greed. Ndonglai did not like trouble. However, if killing Ning Fan would give him a huge reward, then it would be an exception. For this matter, he had made plenty of preparations. According to the compass, the distance between him and Ning Fan was getting closer and closer. Ning Fan was probably flying towards him and had killed all the geniuses of the dark races along the way. 94th son, and Hai is also dead. The 82nd disciple, Yin Lei, has fallen. The 69th child, Yin Shao, is dead. The 43rd disciple, and Feng, is dead. The closer he got to Ning Fan, the darker Ndonglai's eyes became. In just less than 100 breaths of time, more than 10 heavenly geniuses of the dark race and more than 100 broken thoughts of the dark race had already died in Ning Fan's hands? How was this possible? One should know that all the cultivators of the dark race who participated in this hunt had made ample preparations before they came to hunt Ning Fan. Closer, closer. The distance between Ndonglai and Ning Fan was getting closer and closer. He could not help but feel a hint of nervousness and excitement. Suddenly, there was a large blaze burning ahead. Ndonglai stopped abruptly and widened his eyes. Right in front of his eyes, another thought-severing heavenly prodigy of the dark race was burned to ashes by Ning Fan. Even the 19th child, Dark Heaven Stone, isn't a match for this person? It seems that I am also in danger. Even though he said that it was dangerous, Ndonglai could not conceal his excitement. Step by step, he walked towards Ning Fan in the sky. Ning Fan walked out from the flames that blotted out the sky. His eyes were cold and emotionless, looking at Ndonglai as if he was looking at a dead man. This person's cultivation base was just an eternal second tribulation immortal venerable. Thus, Ning Fan did not pay any attention to him. However, for some unknown reason, this person actually gave Ning Fan a sense of danger. Thus, Ning Fan did not underestimate Ndonglai and chose not to kill him as soon as they met. Instead, he chose to observe him. This ancient chaos successor actually didn't immediately kill me when he saw me? Ndonglai was surprised. He thought that Ning Fan couldn't have seen through the peculiarity of his physique, could he? However, he quickly suppressed that thought. His symbiotic fate physique was such a secret that no one knew about it other than the few existences in the clan. Common death constitution, as the name suggested, meant that those who killed others would be linked to their lives, cursed, and die together. Unless it was a celestial king or celestial emperor whose cultivation was several levels higher than him, no one would be able to ignore this curse. No matter how strong Ning Fan was, he was just an ancient immortal venerable. Ndonglai firmly believed that Ning Fan could not resist his special physique. Inside his dantian, Ndonglai's primordial spirit was holding 3 purplish-golden pills in his hands. He was extremely excited. These 3 pills were the death-avoiding pills that the clan had spent a huge amount of resources to find for him. They could allow him to revive 3 times. Perhaps, I only need to use 1 pill to kill Ning Fan today. Dying together once would be enough. You are the successor of ancient chaos? How dare you come to my dark clan alone with such a weak cultivation base? What a trash. Ndonglai's tone was extremely arrogant, trying to provoke Ning Fan into attacking him. Ning Fan gave Ndonglai a deep look. His eyes flashed with green light, as if he could see through Ndonglai's entire body. Ndonglai's heart shuddered. At this moment, being stared at by Ning Fan, he actually had the feeling that he was being stared at by the ancestor of his clan. It was really unimaginable. Curse signifies. I see. Your body carries a curse. Is this innate? Since you were born with such a special physique, you should have a rather transcendent position in the Dark Clan, right? Ning Fan said indifferently. These simple words caused Ndonglai's expression to change drastically. If the immortal emperors of the clan did not know about his physique beforehand, they would not be able to see through it. However, Ning Fan actually saw through everything with just a single glance. Is this the eyesight of the successor of ancient chaos? Curses are born from karma. If there is no karma, there will be no curse. You think you can die with me, but in fact, it's all in vain. Ning Fan seemed to have seen through everything about Ndonglai. He no longer had any worries in his heart. He suddenly waved the wind and fire fan. Countless flames swept towards Ndonglai, causing him to feel so terrified that he almost suffocated. This fan was the attack of an innate magic treasure. However, it was not just the power of an innate magic treasure. Due to the integration of the power of innate lightning and innate flame, the power of this treasure was more than doubled. Only a few low-grade innate magic treasures could achieve such power. Ndonglai, a dignified immortal venerate in the ancient times, actually could not withstand the flames for even a moment and was directly burned into ashes. At the same time, thousands of continents away, the sky above a hill that had been marked by Ndonglai a long time ago suddenly shone brightly. Then, an immortal venerate with 2 wings walked out from it unscathed. However, he was not really unscathed. After his rebirth, Ndonglai's cultivation base had greatly declined from the second eternal tribulation to the first eternal tribulation. Obviously, this kind of rebirth was not without a price. Terrifying. This is too terrifying. Is this the power of the successor of ancient chaos? Is this the monster that our clan had to deal with in the past? I am also an immortal venerate and he is also an immortal venerate. I can even fight against some weak immortal kings without being defeated. However, I can't even survive for half a breath in his hands. How can the gap between us be so huge? However, he still chose to kill me. No matter how strong this person is, he still died with me in the end. He clearly saw through everything about me, but he still dared to attack me. This person is really stupid. Before the last word, stupid, could come out of his mouth, Ndonglai felt his hair stand on end. At this moment, a voice that was as cold as the netherworld resounded behind him. It was bone-chilling. Interesting. You can actually come back from the dead. I wonder how many times you can be reborn. It was Ning Fan. This person had actually separated the karma and was not hurt by my mutual death curse at all. Impossible. How can you still be alive? You clearly killed me. Clearly. Ndonglai's face began to contort and he began to panic. He no longer had any of his usual confidence. Ning Fan was too lazy to talk nonsense with Ndonglai. He waved his palm leaf fan again and burned him into ashes. This person had a special physique which made Ning Fan pay attention to him. However, that was all. In this world, there were too many enemies who possessed special abilities. Ning Fan had seen a lot of them and he had also killed a lot of them. Thus, he was already used to it. Tens of thousands of continents away, Ndonglai was reborn for the second time. Cold sweat poured down his face like rain. Ning Fan actually did not get killed by the mutual death curse. Ning Fan actually crossed the distance of thousands of continents in an instant and caught up to him. Then, he killed him for the second time. Fortunately, his second resurrection point was set further away. Ning Fan should not be able to catch up to him. I must run away immediately, and Ndonglai turned around and was about to leave. However, just as he turned around, he saw a cold and emotionless face staring at him. It was Ning Fan. This person could actually cross the distance of tens of thousands of continents with just a single step. How could there be such a terrifying speed in this world? Explode! Ndonglai was decisive and directly detonated his physical body and primordial spirit. However, this self-detonation naturally could not hurt Ning Fan at all. He did not wait for Ning Fan to kill him because he knew that the mutual death curse was ineffective against Ning Fan. Outside the 100,000 continents, Ndonglai resurrected for the last time. His cultivation base had already fallen to the broken thought realm. His face was pale and his heart was beating wildly. He had already used up all of his death exemption pills. All of them were genuine 9 Revolutions Emperor pills. He could not find a fourth one with him anymore. This time I should be able to run away. His spirit sense shouldn't be able to lock onto me from so far away. Even if his speed is fast enough, his spirit sense shouldn't be able to drip Drip, drip. It was a fine drizzle that casually fell from the sky. A man in white walked out of the curtain of rain indifferently. He still did not waste time talking to Ndonglai. Instead, he burned him into ashes with a wave of his fan. This time, Ndonglai could no longer be resurrected. As for Ning Fan, he finally completed the kill. His eyes looked slightly solemn. As expected, every member of the Dark Race is well prepared for this battle. Even an ancient immortal venerate could be resurrected 3 times. I'm afraid those who are stronger will be even harder to deal with. Although Ning Fan said that it would not be easy, his expression remained calm. Obviously, he did not put his peers from the Dark Race in his eyes. The massacre had just begun. Wouldn't it be more interesting if the other party had the strength to resist? With a flash, Ning Fan disappeared into the rain. In the distant sky, sparks kept exploding. There were geniuses of the Dark Race who died in his hands. There were geniuses of the Dark Race who could connect with the great force of heaven and earth and unleash the power of an immortal emperor in an instant. However, his great force was crushed by Ning Fan's foot and he was stomped into minced meat along with him. There were geniuses of the Dark Race who nurtured millions of formations in their bodies. Every word and action they made was a formation. However, all of their power was frozen in front of Ning Fan. Even when they died, they could not close their eyes in shock. There were geniuses of the Dark Race who nurtured huge stars in their bodies. Their star technique was almost invincible among those who were at the same level as them. However, all of their stars were incinerated by Ning Fan with just a wave of his hand. There were geniuses of the Dark Race who gathered all the earth fire in the Dark Continent in an attempt to burn Ning Fan to death. However, Ning Fan casually absorbed all of the earth fire and helped him recover a large amount of magic power. The 100 seedlings of the Dark Race died one after another. Even if the people of the same generation were fully prepared, they were still no match for Ning Fan. In Luo Sha's face darkened. He had already witnessed Ning Fan's strength back in the Supreme Pill's sacred region. However, he did not expect Ning Fan to be even stronger than before. Since the 100 seedlings of the Dark Race dared to come here to kill Ning Fan, which one of them did not come with a trump card? Even if the Great Eastern Sky Sovereign were to come here, he certainly would not end up well. However, no one could kill Ning Fan. That day in the Extreme Dan sacred region, I had no power to resist in front of this child. That was because I did not bring my strongest corpse armor, but this time, I will not lose. I'm In Luo Sha. I'm the person with the highest aptitude in the history of my clan. Who is Ning Fan? How can he be compared to me? Behind In Luo Fa was a massive black coffin. It was like a 1,000,000 zhang tall mountain, its aura soaring into the sky. Closer, closer, In Luo Sha finally tore off all the talisman seals on the coffin and opened it. Dust filled the air. Inside the coffin was a giant that was close to 1,000,000 zhang tall. Both of his eyes were empty. The giant was wearing a black dragon robe. His attire was indescribably dignified. Black star power was hidden around his body, giving people a feeling that he would never be defeated. Every inch of the giant's skin was broken. It was forcefully stitched together with a needle and thread. It had already lost all signs of life. This was not a living person but a corpse. It was the remains of a supreme existence in the past after he self-detonated. The Dark Race found the broken pieces of the corpse and stitched them together to form a complete corpse. When Ning Fan followed the chi of In Luo Fa to this place, what he saw was a giant corpse with empty eyes. The chi of the giant corpse was extremely terrifying. It caused Ning Fan's expression to change slightly. However, that was all. When Ning Fan saw the face of the giant corpse clearly, he could no longer suppress the shock and anger in his heart. The face of the giant corpse was none other than Mu Weiliang's biological father, Heaven's Sovereign. Why is the corpse of Heaven's Sovereign in the hands of the Dark Race? Didn't Heaven's Sovereign self-detonate during the battle of the ancient heavenly court? Why is his corpse here? The scenes that happened between him and Heaven's Sovereign flashed across his mind. Under the connection of all living beings, he could hear the sorrow in Heaven's Sovereign's corpse. What did you guys do to Heaven's Sovereign's corpse? Ning Fan asked coldly. Don't be anxious. You will know very soon, Luofa sneered. His body flashed and turned into a ray of dark light, flying into the dantian of Heaven Sovereign's corpse. At this moment, black ghost flames were burning in the hollow eye sockets of Heaven Sovereign. It was indescribably strange. I see. Using your cultivation base as the primordial spirit of this corpse to control it. Ning Fan's eyes flashed with green light as if he had seen through everything. However, he did not have much time to study it. Under the control of Lu, Heaven Sovereign's corpse had already broken the giant coffin and walked out. Then, it lifted its foot, wanting to stomp Ning Fan into minced meat. The stomp of the 1,000,000 zhang giant body directly left a giant footprint that was over 100,000 zhang long on the continent. Then the entire continent trembled slightly. The mountains, rivers, plants, and living beings were all turned into ashes. It was so precise that it could crush a speck of dust. If it hits a human body, it would be enough to severely injure a six-tribulation immortal emperor in the Dharma ending era. Ning Fan was not hit. With his incredible speed, he had already flown into the sky and evaded the attack. However, he was also stunned by the destructive power of the attack. Controlling this corpse with only Luofa's cultivation base could already exert such destructive power. If Heaven Sovereign attacks with his own cultivation base, how destructive would it be? Heaven Sovereign should be an ancient great cultivator when he was still alive. After his death, he became a mere killing toy for Luofa. Little fly, why don't you activate your cross-shaped halos? Could it be that you also know that your cross-shaped halos can't stop an ancient being like Heaven Sovereign? Or do you think you can fight Heaven Sovereign without using your full strength? How arrogant of you! Luofa's laughter reverberated across heaven and earth. He controlled Heaven Sovereign's corpse and threw 100 punches at Ning Fan, who was in the sky. He was confident that Ning Fan could not stop Heaven Sovereign's corpse. According to his research, the coverage of Ning Fan's cross-shaped halos was limited. It would not exceed 10,000 zhang. It was not enough to cover the entire corpse. Sometimes, having a large body is also beneficial. At least, if his body becomes bigger, he would be able to go beyond the coverage of the cross-shaped halos. Heaven Sovereign's 100 punches sealed all of Ning Fan's escape routes, making it impossible for him to evade. All he could do was to face them head-on with all his might. Ning Fan did not use the God-exterminating shield because he was not sure if an Yuanshan was spying on him at this moment or if he would recognize the heaven-opening treasure. Thus, he chose to activate the cross-shaped halos. Under the interweaving of 100,000 black runes, Ning Fan stood in the sky. His body emitted the dignified aura of an ancient divine being. Since Heaven Sovereign used his fists to attack, he also used his fists to retaliate. Once the cross-shaped halos are activated, not only would Ning Fan's magic power be endless, but he would also have a huge physical body that could recover. The ancient Devil Mountain breaking strike was launched in an instant and he threw out 100 punches at Heaven Sovereign's punches. One after another, the surrounding continents were shattered by the shockwaves from the collision of the punches, turning into dust and vanishing. In front of the 1,000,000 zhang humongous Heaven Sovereign, Ning Fan's body was as tiny as a speck of dust. However, in this collision of punches, they were evenly matched. If it's the real Heaven Sovereign, Ning Fan certainly would not be able to do this. However, his opponent was just the corpse of Heaven Sovereign. The power that Luosha could display was probably not even 1/10,000th of the true power of Heaven Sovereign. Heaven Sovereign? Heaven Sovereign? Ning Fan's eyes were filled with a hint of sadness. The senior who once played chess with him in the illusory realm, the emperor who protected the ancient heavenly court until he died in battle, the loving father who was still worried about his daughter when he taught him the Black Star art, today, all that was left was a corpse that was stitched up by a needle and thread. If Mu Weiliang knew that her biological father had fallen to such a state, how sad would she be? If the cultivators of the ancient heavenly court were still alive and knew that their emperor was being controlled by a child, how sad would they be? Ning Fan felt that his ancient Devil Mountain breaking strike seemed to have fused with something. The destructive power of his punches became stronger and stronger. That kind of enhancement was not just because of the increase in the number of consecutive hits. Instead, it was because each of Ning Fan's punches were filled with emotions and will. The ancient Devil Mountain breaking strike was born from the ancient Devil Dao of destruction. Its destructive power would only be at its greatest when the host wants to destroy something. The feeling of the ancient Devil Mountain breaking strike becoming stronger could only be sensed but not described. Ning Fan did not want to ask why the corpse of Heaven Sovereign was here. He did not want to ask what the dark race had done to the corpse all these years. At this moment he only wanted to do one thing: to break all the restraints of Heaven Sovereign. To truly bury the corpse of Heaven Sovereign and let him rest in peace under the yellow earth. You're just a cultivator in the last cultivation era, but you're actually able to fight against the ancient Heavenly Sovereign without losing. In Luo Sha's face turned pale with fright. He performed a hand seal and an endless amount of black star force shot out from the body of Heaven Sovereign. The starlight was as sharp as a flying sword. The billion star sword slashed at Ning Fan. So, the black star technique can be used like this? Ning Fan was astonished. After the astonishment passed, he sighed with emotion. If Heaven Sovereign himself uses the star sword to kill him, he certainly would not be a match for him. However, if Yin Luo Sha was like this, it was not worth mentioning at all. Rumble. Rumble. Ning Fan sent out punches after punches. Countless star swords crumbled in the vault of heaven. There was still some black star force left on Heaven Sovereign's corpse. However, there was only a small amount of it left. It was not even 1/1000th of what it had when it was at its peak. Otherwise, why would the remnant waves of Ning Fan's ancient Devil Mountain breaking strike leave a wound on Heaven Sovereign's corpse that could not be healed? Otherwise, why would it take a needle and thread to stitch the flesh together, and why the wound could not be healed? Not even the 1000 manifestations Starry Sky Sword can kill you. How about I use the immemorial Starry Sky Seal again? Heaven Sovereign pressed one of his hands forward. Hundreds and thousands of illusory stars appeared in the sky and charged at Ning Fan. Ning Fan silently calculated the time and threw out punch after punch. 15 breaths. 16 breaths. 17 breaths. It was the time when the cross-shaped halo was activated. 200 hits. 300 hits. 400 hits. It was the number of consecutive hits of the ancient Devil Mountain breaking strike that kept increasing. 500 hits. 600 hits. 700 hits. 800 hits. Under the backlash of the 800 hits of the ancient Devil Mountain breaking strike, Ning Fan's body crumbled under the cross-shaped halo time and time again. However, a black shadow flashed and his flesh and blood reformed. At this moment, he no longer needed to worry about his magic power being insufficient or his physical body not being able to withstand the backlash of the 800 hits. What he needed to worry about was not him but Yin Luo Sha. Under the 800 consecutive hits, Heaven Sovereign's corpse exploded. Countless pieces of flesh that were forcefully stitched together burst apart and a foul smell filled the air. Yin Luo Sha spurted out blood and appeared in the sky. Now that he had lost the protection of Heaven Sovereign's physical body, how would he still dare to fight against Ning Fan? His body was trembling uncontrollably. He exploded. Heaven Sovereign's physical body was actually destroyed by Ning Fan's 800 consecutive punches. Even though Heaven Sovereign's corpse no longer had any signs of life, even some of the great Eastern Heaven Sovereigns would not be able to destroy it. However, Ning Fan could do it. He's really a monster. Great escape of Dark Ancestor. Yin Luo Sha no longer dared to continue fighting after losing his greatest support. His body flashed and vanished without a trace. However, Ning Fan tore apart heaven and earth and pulled him out from within. After that, he exploded with a single punch. It was already Yin Luo Sha's honor to be hit by the 801st punch of the ancient Devil Mountain breaking strike. Of course, he could not resist at all. With just a single punch, he turned into a mist of blood and died without even having the chance to scream. Countless old monsters of the dark race who sensed what had happened all sucked in a cold breath. Who would have thought that even Yin Luo Sha, who had used Heaven Sovereign's corpse, was not a match for Ning Fan? Even though he was not frozen by the cross-shaped halo, he was still no match for him. Trash. All of you are trash. We are all members of the younger generation, but why is there such a huge gap between the juniors of my clan and Ning Fan? Trash like him deserves to die. A third tribulation immortal king was infuriated. He moved stealthily towards the direction where Ning Fan and Yin Luosha were fighting. Even though he was traveling stealthily, his speed was actually faster than many high-level immortal kings who were flying at full speed. It was really impressive. This person's name was Tianqing. He was an old-generation immortal king of the dark race. He was also the person who was the closest to Ning Fan right now. He might not be the person with the highest cultivation base in the dark race, but he was certainly the best at assassination. For some unknown reason, after Ning Fan killed Yin Luosha, he actually stayed at the same place and did not go anywhere else. This surprised Tianqing. Tianqing bent his body and flew in the sky. From time to time, his hand would touch the dagger hanging on his waist. It was a dagger made from a beast's tooth. The edge of the blade did not look sharp, but it gave off a strange feeling as if there was nothing it could not tear apart. As long as he touched this beast's tooth dagger, Tianqing would feel at ease. Even if his opponent was someone who could kill immortal emperors, Tianqing was not afraid of him. When Tianqing sneaked all the way to the battlefield and saw Ning Fan busily collecting the pieces of Heaven Sovereign's corpse, he immediately understood why Ning Fan stayed here and did not leave. It turns out that this young man is interested in the corpse of Heaven Sovereign. Unfortunately, the vitality of these pieces of corpse has already been depleted. They are now just like scrap metal. Even the old ancestor could not truly repair them. Just stitching this corpse back together has already cost me a huge price. In return, I only obtained a corpse armor with the combat power of an immortal emperor. It is still useful to the juniors, but it is not something extraordinary. Now that this corpse has been destroyed for the second time, it is even more useless. It is meaningless for this young man to collect these pieces of corpse, but he doesn't know it. Tianqing's heart was filled with disdain. He tiptoed towards Ning Fan step by step. He was confident that his stealth was unparalleled in the world. Even immortal emperors would rarely be able to detect his presence. His proudest achievement in his life was participating in the assassination of an immortal emperor of the Southern Clan. Even though he did not kill that immortal emperor, his dantian was severely damaged and his foundation was greatly damaged. With his rich experience in assassination, Tianqing was naturally not nervous at all, even if his opponent this time was Ning Fan. If it is a head-on battle, his strength would be considered weak even among the Third Tribulation immortal kings. He probably would not be a match for Ning Fan. However, if it is an assassination, he was confident that he could kill 10 Ning Fan. 10 steps, 9 steps, 8 steps, and Tianqing was getting closer and closer to Ning Fan. He pulled out his dagger, planning to stab Ning Fan's waist from his back and break open his dantian. 7 steps, 6 steps, 5 steps, 4 steps, and Tianqing could hear his heart pounding violently. It was not because he was nervous, but because he was excited. 3 steps, 2 steps, 1 step, and Tianqing thrust his dagger forward and accurately pierced Ning Fan's waist and back. The feeling of a knife cutting through tofu did not make Tianqing feel suspicious at all. He knew that Ning Fan's physical body was strong, but no matter how strong it was still tofu in front of the piercing all living things divine dagger. Soon, however, he could no longer remain calm. Ning Fan, who was pierced by the dagger, suddenly became faint and disappeared like the moon in the water. Damn it! It's actually an illusion technique. Not good. Dispel it. And Tianqing was greatly shocked. He forcefully dispelled the illusion technique and coughed out a mouthful of blood. Then his soul almost left his body. The scene where he tried to assassinate Ning Fan was actually an illusion. At this moment, he was holding the dagger in his hand and was still in a crouching posture. However, he was not invisible. Could it be that the moment he fell into the illusion technique, his invisibility was automatically dispelled? The dagger in your hand actually gave me a sense of danger. If I really let you get close to me, I might be killed by you. Unfortunately, how could there be so many possibilities and ifs in a battle between cultivators? Ning Fan's perception of the rain technique was extremely terrifying. How could he be assassinated by someone who was stealthily approaching him? And Tianxing knew that something was amiss. He turned invisible again and tried to escape from this place. However, Ning Fan casually tore apart heaven and earth and caught him. If it wasn't for the assassination, he was just a weak immortal king. How could he be Ning Fan's opponent? And Tianxing made up his mind and used his abilities to fight against Ning Fan. However, he was burnt into ashes by Ning Fan's wind and fire fan in just one move. My attack was a little too heavy. Both Tianxing and his storage pouch had been burnt to ashes. There are still spoils of war? Ning Fan was slightly surprised. He took out the beast-tooth dagger that Tianxing always carried with him and held it in his hand. This dagger was actually not burnt by the wind and fire fan. It's really extraordinary. No wonder it could give me a sense of danger. It's not an innate magic treasure. This item was not forged in any way. It was just a sharp beast tooth with a pendant. It looked like a dagger. Moreover, Ning Fan did not know why, but when he held this dagger, he felt a sense of resonance with his divine spirit bloodline. It was extremely strange. Just as he was about to study the dagger carefully, the dagger suddenly turned into a ray of light and flew out of Ning Fan's palm. Ning Fan raised his hand to grab it, but his palm was cut open by the dagger. While he was stunned for a moment, the dagger had already taken the chance to escape. Ning Fan's eyes darkened slightly and stared at the wound on his palm. His crippled divine spirit body could even withstand an attack from an innate magic treasure. However, it was easily cut open by a beast tooth that was not even a magic treasure. This dark race sure has a deep foundation. Even a third tribulation immortal king has such a powerful divine weapon. It's really not something that the Eastern Heaven immortal king can compare to. I'm afraid that the immortal king that I just killed is not a nobody in the dark race. Unfortunately, Ning Fan did not ask for Tianxing's name because he was really not interested in the identity of a dead person. Everything has its own destiny. In the past, Senior taught me the Black Star art. Today, I will cremate Senior's corpse and free your body. Ning Fan did not put Tianxing's assassination in his heart. After keeping the Heavenly Sovereign's corpse, he breathed out a stream of flames that was made up of lightning and fire, burning the corpse into ashes. Then he carefully kept the ashes, preparing to hand them over to Mu Weiliang after he returns. After doing all these, Ning Fan left in a flash and continued to hunt the geniuses of the dark race. He did not know that there was a beast-like gaze secretly observing him at this moment. In another world that was connected to the Dark Continent, and Yuanshan was lying in a black coffin and asked a young man with dog ears outside the coffin, "Black Rope, what do you think of this prey? Is he worthy to be your enemy?" The young man whose name was Black Rope was naked from the waist up. He wore a beast skin skirt and a necklace made of dog teeth around his neck. His long hair was braided and hung down to his waist. He had a pair of black dog ears. His skin was dark. He squatted on the ground like a dog and played with the bloody beast-tooth dagger in his hand. His expression was lazy. He's not strong enough. Even though he has the chi of a demigod like me, he's too weak. He's not qualified for me to bite him to death. Hee. I know you don't think highly of this young man. But you should know that you're representing me in this battle. You should know that I want to defeat ancient chaos at least once no matter what. The reason I sent those juniors is just to test this young man's strength and give you a reference. It's better if this young man is weak. Only when he's weak can I win against him once. I can't understand the thoughts of weaklings. However, if this young man doesn't show enough value, I won't make a move. How troublesome. In order to make you interested in this young man, I have to sacrifice even more juniors. They're just a bunch of trash. If they die, it means that their existence is worthless. Black Rope no longer paid attention to Yuanshan. He swallowed the beast-tooth dagger and lay down on the ground to sleep. The suppressive force around him was actually similar to that of a 9-tribulation immortal emperor. However, it should be known that Black Rope was only a 5-tribulation immortal king. Ancient chaos, I've never been as good as you. However, this disciple of mine is definitely 1,000 times better than yours. He's a first-generation demigod. Under my nourishment, he's almost as good as a deity's body in the legends. Even though that disciple of yours also has the power of a god, he's a demigod whose bloodline has been diluted for many generations. You've been suppressing me all your life, but there's still one thing that you're not as good as me. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.